Welcome to the lock-in. I'm Barry Chandler, coming to you live from Cork again, not in West Cork tonight, but in East Cork, and we're going to have a good old night tonight. It's Friday. We've survived another week. Luckily, we have our health, hopefully. I'm delighted you could join us. I'd love to know what's in your glass. I'd love to know what you're drinking. Where are you? I thought we'd just have 3 whiskeys tonight. I think we're going to have a lot more than 3 whiskeys tonight. It's going to be a great old session tonight. Lots of whiskeys, lots of music, lots of chat, and a good old night, which we all need at the end of a week, settling into our weekend and getting ready for the week ahead. So wherever you're joining us from, whether you're in Ireland, Europe, United States, you're very welcome. I'm delighted that we get to do this every week. It's kind of the highlight of my week. So great to see so many of you. Chris Hennessy is here. Stewie is here. Jeff Timmy is here. Jeff, you had some minor surgeries. Feel better. Hope things go well for you down there in Indiana. Mark is with the family, sipping on Teeling and Method and Madness in Florida. Good man, Mark. Busy week in the world, I think you'll all agree. Lots to keep up with, lots of news, lots of strains on our mental health, I would argue, with trying to keep up with the madness that's going on in the world between pandemics and elections and whatever we have. So hopefully this lock-in proves to be a bit of a distraction and allows us the chance to come together and have a bit of a session locked into a pub, our virtual pub tonight. I hope you like my fire. I got great feedback on my fire last week. The week before, I was getting awful slagging over the poor quality of the fire. But tonight, the fire is guaranteed not to go out. In fact, if it does get a bit low, all we'll do is we'll press rewind and we'll start it all over again. So Chris says, no real turf on the fire. Must have entered Cork. Listen, Cork has plenty of turf now, Chris, to be fair. But not in this house. There's no fireplace in this house. Jesus, it's not even a real house at all, is it? Without a fireplace. Loads of whiskies to get through tonight, which is great. The 3 that we advertised that I'd be sipping on are Grace O'Malley Rum Cask, which I think I'm going to start with that tonight, and then I'll be sipping on West Cork IPA Cask, collaboration with Black's Brewery / Distillery in Cork. And then what's next? Oh, yes, then I'll have the Green Spot 26-year-old. This is a sample bottle of this wonderful Green Spot 26-year-old. And then some other whiskies might make an appearance, like the Bushmills 2008, which I picked up this week and already opened it, and I'm enjoying that. So that might make an appearance as well. And our guest will be bringing a handful of incredible bottles to share with us as well and to tell the stories of and to take your questions as well. So hi to Diarmid, Val, Paul, Stephen, Richard, James. Fair play to you. Thanks for joining. Great to see you all here again tonight. Before we bring on our special guest, Phil Crawford, tonight to join us for some cracks, some tunes, some whiskies, I want to remind you that every week we release a podcast episode on Stories and Sips. And it's a chat with somebody interesting from the world of Irish whiskey and the world of Irish spirits, focused predominantly, of course, on Irish whiskey. And this week was no different. We released a great chat that I had with Mr. Dave Mulligan, who is the founder of Bar 1661 in Dublin. And I think you'd all agree, if you listen to this episode, Dave is the most passionate human on the face of the earth for Ireland's native spirit, poitín. And we don't hear a lot about poitín, but before Irish whiskey, Dave will argue there was poitín. And if we're not aware of it, if we don't know about it, if we don't have the chance to taste it, we may forget and we may not know the incredible flavors and tastes that come from poitín. Dave has his own poitín, Bawn Poitín, and Bar 1661 is an incredible bar in Dublin. And I'd encourage you to check out the chat. A more passionate man, and a man that is, I think, filled with a drive based on how he sees things in the world and how he doesn't like certain things in the world and what he's been driven to do to change that. So I'd encourage you to check out our episode with Dave Mulligan this week. I also posted on Twitter today that Bar 1661, which of course is a bar in Ireland that is under lockdown. There's no bars open in Ireland right now. They are struggling. The bar industry is struggling. So many businesses are struggling. Dave has done something to try and keep his bartenders employed, to keep the lights on. He's created a brand new brand around the bar called Craft Cocktails, craftcocktails.ie, which is the Irish domain name. And he is selling amazing cocktails. I bought 6 of them this week, a pack of 6, these amazing colors. Here's an old fashioned, a porn star martini. Every lockdown needs a porn star, it seems. A strawberry daiquiri, lovely, beautiful branding, stunning colors, and we opened a raspberry Negroni earlier tonight and tasted that, which was really, really good. So there's 2 good pours in each bottle. So his and hers, or his and his, or hers or hers, or whatever you want to do. Support local bars. That's one way to do it. If you can do it, it's a nice way to do it, and it keeps the bartenders in business as well. All right, so you're all drinking all kinds of things. Belfast Whiskey Week is wondering if this is live. Of course it's live. It's never not live. It's always live. He says he's either confused or drunk. All right, so that was the podcast. What else do I have to tell you about? Let me see. Nothing, just keep an eye on the fire for me. It's behind me, so you'll tell me if the fire goes out, and I'll know to press, instead of throwing a pile of turf or a block of wood on the fire, I'll just press rewind, and we'll be good to go all night. Paul Andrew says that if I turn up the volume on it, we might get a Fairy Tale of New York playing. Well, I had the volume up there earlier, and all I could hear was this crackling as if there was a timber from the roof falling in. So I thought that's not going to help us tonight. Well, look, tonight we're going to have a good old chat. We're settled in. It's a Friday night. I know it's late in Ireland, and I'm the one who's normally broadcasting at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, West Coast of Ireland time, and I'm laughing at everyone in Ireland staying up till midnight to watch the lock-in. Well, there's no way that I would not take my own medicine. I'm staying up till midnight to do this so that everybody in America still gets the lock-in at their usual time. And I know that's a challenge for us here in Ireland. It's so late. But look, I hope to keep you entertained, and my guest will do that more than I will. So let us go now and bring in our special guest tonight, and that is Mr. Philip Crawford. Thank you for joining us, Phil.
Thanks very much, Barry, for having me on. I really appreciate the invite.
You are a well-known man in the world of Irish whiskey. You are the author at Causeway Coast Whiskey Reviews, contributing writer at Malt Review, and let's say your reviews tend to get a lot of press and a lot of attention, don't they?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose I'm pretty well known for being like the grumpiest person in Ireland as when it comes to whiskey. You know, I've managed to get my own hashtag going. It was called a jealous, pathetic gobshite by someone on a Proper 12 review, and it sort of all spiraled from there, to be quite honest. So. Yeah, I suppose I just say what I have to say, and that's really it, Barry, you know.
So the Irish whiskey industry is, we were talking about this before we came on air, it's still relatively young in terms of reviewers and those out there who are taking objective kind of viewpoints on whiskey. And you've been at this a while, and maybe even before the Irish whiskey industry was kind of in its resurgence, you got an interest in whiskey and maybe in Scotch as well, didn't you, before you kind of came to the Irish side of things?
Yeah, so actually, probably like a lot of people at a certain time. So I mean, I got into whiskey whenever I was like 18, and I started drinking Jack Daniels, to be honest, Barry. So you know, don't hate me, but the whole thing was back then. I kind of thought, well, if it's good enough for Lemmy from Motorhead, it's bound to be good enough for me. And fair enough, you know. Thanks, Dave. But then it just kind of spiraled from there, because then I started investigating Irish blends, I started investigating Scotch blends, and then I started going, well, is like a £20 or £25 bottle of whiskey better than a £15 bottle of whiskey? And then that just led you down the rabbit hole of like single malts and, you know, blended malts and just all the rest of it. And so that's whenever I kind of got most of my interest. But the big thing, Barry, to be honest, was a night that Fairley's Wines in Coleraine organised, and it was actually a Jameson tasting, and Billy Lighton was there. So, as you know, Billy lives up on the north coast. He lives in Port Stewart, and they would frequent Fairley's quite a lot. Absolutely fantastic off-licence. Get pretty much whatever you want in there. But what really got me was that he brought the entire range at that time. So you had so the only red breast that was available was the 12-year-old, and you had Jameson Crested, or Crested 10 as it was then. There was the Gold Label Reserve, the 18-year-old. They also had the Vintage Reserve. So even back then, it was like nearly £300 a bottle. And the thing that really got me though was he came with sample bottles of like how bourbon affected the new make over time, how sherry affected new make over time. He brought the barley, he brought the maize, he brought staves from barrels, and it was very interactive, and like it was just honestly, see, after that tasting, I was just like, right, there's so much more to this
Yeah,
than I ever knew.
I know.
And that was it. That was the hook.
That got you hooked. And I know you've been very you've celebrated the likes of Jameson Black Barrel and the cask strength version of Jameson Black Barrel. You would count as being some of your favorite whiskies of a lot of the whiskies that you review.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like Jameson Black Barrel, for the money, is one of the best blends, like, period.
Yeah.
Like, even like there's Scotches can't touch it. Do you know what I mean? So like Jameson Black Bush, like Mark McLaughlin was on last week, I would totally hold Black Bush in very high regard. I think that is undoubtedly one of the best value whiskies that you will ever come across. And
that's your part of the world. The Causeway Coast is Bushmills country, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Although I'm sort of blacklisted from there, I think. So.
Did you give them a bad review as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, whenever the Red Bush came out, I gave that a 3 out of 10 on Malt.
You were having none of it.
Well, a bit like Mark said last week. I mean, Mark was quite open about that as well, where he was saying he just didn't see where it fitted into the range, and I was very much similar. I kind of thought, what's this doing very much differently from the white label? Yeah. It doesn't compare to Black Bush. Like, what's the point? And then the other thing was that I refused to publicize it. So I think the PR company took a wee bit of a huff over that. So, but there you go.
We're going to talk more about the reviewing side, because I'm super curious about your own approach, and I want to talk about some of your reviews. But there's a couple of things tonight. One is you brought a guitar with you. You didn't just bring whiskey with you. Give us a look at the guitar.
Brought a guitar, yeah.
Flash the guitar there.
So
there it is.
A bit of acoustic action for you.
Chris Hennessy said he wanted to see your G string, so that satisfied Chris there. What else? You also brought a bunch of whiskeys with you. Why don't we each of us pour our first whiskey, talk about the whiskey, and then we'll go into a tune. We'll do, as we were saying before we went on, tonight we'll do whiskey tune, whiskey tune, whiskey tune, whiskey tune, whiskey tune, whiskey tune, until about 6 a.m. And then when people finally go home, we'll stop and we'll just keel over.
That'll do, no problem. Well, the first one I'm going for, because I know you're going for the Grace O'Malley rum cask.
Yeah.
So as I sort of mentioned to you, that I didn't have the particular whiskies you're drinking, so I thought I need to find something that's rum finished. So I'm going to go for the Cologne 10-year-old blend. Great whiskey. Yeah. Great whiskey.
And I've got the Grace O'Malley. This is a limited edition one, I think. This is a very unusual bottle. It is a kind of a leather-bound label. It's got a nice little lattice kind of lacing here. And I think Grace O'Malley came on the scene maybe last year or the year before.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It's a sourced whiskey. It's named for, I mean, there's a story behind this, and I'm interested to get your thoughts on these stories that I think you've been quite vocal about whether stories have a place. And I'm going to tie this into something that you'll get in a second. But there's this Grace O'Malley was known as the Pirate Queen. We learned about Grace O'Malley when we were in school growing up. She was known as Grania Whale, and she was this famous marauder in the 1500s who famously fought the British and kind of imperial British rule in Ireland, and her and her family would have been fierce defenders of kind of the Irish, kind of an Irish nationalist, really. And she's been, I suppose, heroed as an Irish kind of nationalist hero over the years. There wasn't a lot written about her at the time, but historians have gone back and kind of pieced things together. She was from Mayo, Westport, or kind of the west of Ireland anyway, County Mayo. Clare Island is where she called home. Yeah, interesting.
And there was she had a castle there, didn't she, where the door was kind of like 3/4 of the way up the castle?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. She famously, I think she met Elizabeth I, Queen, to kind of have a kind of negotiation about, I think her brothers might have been taken or imprisoned by the crown, and she famously met the Queen and had a dagger hidden in her cloak, which was discovered, but she was not at all in any way intimidated by the presence of the crown, and if she has the dagger left in her cloak, I say she might have gone for her. But in any case, there's this interesting story behind Grace O'Malley. Whether it applies to the whiskey then is the other thing. That's
well, I mean, I suppose she's maybe like she's kind of like the Irish version of Boadicea, you know.
Yeah. It's a rum cask. It's a blended whiskey. It's interesting in its makeup. It's a mixture of double distilled malt and triple distilled malt, up to about 46% in total of malt, and then I think 54% grain. The oldest components are about 10 years old. So interesting. I until I sat down and went into it fully, I didn't realize that there was this kind of vatting of malts, which is a relatively new thing, I think, in Ireland, isn't it, with whiskies?
Yeah, and actually, that's quite a high malt content as well.
It is,
So I mean, that's quite interesting.
Tell us about the Cologne whiskey.
So the Cologne, Cologne just fills me full of excitement about what Brendan's wanting to do up there. But obviously, like the Bonded series has been a good way for him to experiment with a bit of like casks, maturation, and finishes, which will obviously help him out whenever he's maturing his own whiskey. So, I mean, this is 75% grain that has come from Cooley. They have 5% 2008 malt from Cooley, and then there's 20% actually Bushmills. And the Bushmills is actually about 11 or 12 years old. And actually, that actually I think really lifts the blends that he's put out, having that extra bit of malt in there. And I don't know whether a lot of people know this, actually not. Maybe Brendan's going to be really annoyed for me divulging this, but it was actually Ecklandville Distillery that sold him the Bushmills malt to help him out. So actually, I think it's pretty cool that there's like the guys up there are trying to help each other out, you know, to put out really great products. So I like that, you know. I like that.
We've had Brendan on the lock in the past, and he's a great character, and another, not unlike yourself, kind of a man who puts a stake in the ground, has a position, fiercely defends it, won't back down, and that's fine. He's you want people with a backbone in the industry too. He's a great character. There was a whiskey. Paul O'Kane is on here from Belfast Whiskey Week as well. There was a sample from Killowen in one of the packs that I absolutely fell in love with, and I can't remember the finish. Was it chestnut? Was it? I can't remember what it was. Paul might be able to weigh in.
So he's done the finishes he's done so far. He's done the dark rum. He's done a Chacolina Acacia.
Yep.
Then there was the Peated Cask.
Yep.
We've had a Pinot Noir. The third one was a tequila.
It could have been the Acacia. I bet it's the Acacia.
It could be the Acacia.
Yeah.
Also, did you get the introduction or the exclusive, the Irish exclusive pack?
Paul has said here, Hungarian oak. That was the one.
Hungarian oak.
That's the one. Okay. I knew it was a different type of wood, oak, I suppose, is not a different type of wood, the normal wood, oak, but Hungarian oak, wonderful flavor. And I'm not sure if that was released as a full bottle. I don't think it was.
No, it hasn't yet. I don't even think I have a sample. That might have been for the sample batch, because there was two different Cologne tastings in Belfast Whiskey Week, and that might have been the second one.
This the Grace O'Malley is very kind of subdued on the nose. It's not. At first, I thought I might have coronavirus, but I didn't smell anything. I don't. I've been quarantined for long enough, but it's very subdued on the nose, and it kind of opens up a little bit, almost like a kind of burnt sugar, kind of a very deep, kind of a sugary nose to it, and the same then on the palate. It's got a kind of a light, dry, or kind of a dry finish to it.
Well, I mean, obviously the thing about Brendan's blend is that he puts them out at cask strength, and he's also kind enough to leave some of the cask actually in the bottle for you. So that's quite
free
nice.
barrel.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So it's actually about 55% this one, so it is definitely not behind the door in the nose. You can tell there's grain driving it, so it's quite floral, but there's loads of vanilla, and then there's like tropical fruit and candy floss. So you're getting like mangoes and papayas, and then kind of like black pepper on the nose. The good thing is that actually translates to the palate as well.
Do you like rum casks? Like, do you like rum finishes?
I think, for example, I know Bushmills definitely takes rum really well. I've tried some rum finishes and I haven't been overly enamoured. And I'm not going to say anything about how much what I feel about this cologne, because there's a review coming out on Malt on Wednesday. So I'm not going to give any scores away or anything like that.
Give us an exclusive here now, Phil. Come on, spill the beans.
Well, let's just say that of the bonded experimental series, this is probably my favourite of them. So that'll let Brendan know that he's in safe hands.
Okay, so I was talking today with James Doherty from Sleeve League Distillers, and we're having a chat on the phone, and he said to me, "I see you're having Phil on the show tonight, are you?" So, yeah. And he said, "Would you ever tell him to take down the review that he put up about the Silky all those a while ago?" And he said he's not going to do it, but I think he threatened me that he will never support Stories and Sips if I didn't get you to take down that post. So listen, we have to keep the lights on here with Stories and Sips. Are you going to take down your review of the Silky?
No, and the reason, I mean, I had this conversation with James actually at Whisky Live, whenever we could go to things like that, Barry.
Yeah.
And I was just like, look, I'm very, because James had sort of indicated that it had hurt the business a bit, and while for me that was sad because I don't want to hurt people's business, at the same time I was like, look, I can't, because editorially, people come to Malt because of that, and if we start taking down reviews because people are complaining about it, then it kind of undermines our whole position. And
so you had taken a firm position on, like, I know you weaved in. I read the review afterwards because I wasn't aware of it, but
yeah,
you talked about the story of the Silky, that kind of mythical creature legend in Donegal, and then your review kind of gave, let's just say, some objective suggestions and feedback.
Yeah. I think that's quite a diplomatic way of putting it. Yeah. I mean, the thing about it is, Barry, like, well, I hope I don't come across nasty whenever I do these reviews. Like, I do genuinely try to always put something positive in the review. So, for example, on the first Silky review, I was quite clear that this was not the whiskey to judge James on, because, like, I am incredibly excited about his, like, MO for what he has for his distillery, like triple distill, peated, single malt, triple distill, peated, single pot still, like, bring it on. Like, that sounds wonderful. And the original Silky, in a way, just didn't meet up to, like, even what he was envisaging for his own distillery. Like, the Silky part of it, I didn't really mind. Like, like, lots of brands go down the routes. I mean, Highland Park are renowned for, like, I mean, they have bears and Vikings and all sorts of nonsense. That's fine, whatever. I suppose more at the time, the other thing that was kind of getting at was maybe like the labeling legislation that we have in Ireland, because on the original Silky it was sort of plastered over it about, like, Sleeve League Distillery, and I was kind of like, well, you make gin, you don't make whiskey. So I have a bit of an issue, and more so was the fact that whenever I was doing a bit of research, I came across on Amazon someone had bought a bottle for their husband in America, and she was like, "Oh, I'm so glad that I've got Donegal's first whiskey for my husband." And I was kind of like, "Well, it's not from Donegal; it's from County Louth." And it's kind of like the type of labelling that I think in Scotland they couldn't get away with, and I think that's something in Ireland we maybe need to start going a wee bit.
And I think for those who followed along over the last few months, like, we've had these conversations with various guests about labelling in Ireland and about what can and can't be put on. A lot of it is governed too by European law. I mean, Ireland is a subset of European directives and European law, and the Irish Whisky Association reached out in the past, was keen to correct me and make sure that I knew that it's not just Irish law, it's European law, which we take the correction. So it is, I think that there's going to be consumer feedback that hopefully will change or maybe influence how labeling works, and the fact that you can't the fact that, look, I've got a whiskey here, Green Spot 26-year-old. There could be 29-year-old whiskey in there, but they're not allowed to tell you because they can only tell you the youngest whiskey. So I think things like that aren't really consumer favorable, are they?
No, not really. And like, I think that's even one of the things with like Brendan and Cologne. Like, I mean, recently he's been having to deface his own bottles by like, with pens to, and you just sort of think like, I think nowadays most consumers are very well educated in what they're buying, and they're curious and they're looking for answers. And they people are buying an experience. They want to know what's there. And I know you can give them too much information. So there is a balance there.
I suppose as we've beaten this dead horse many times, but the legislation was written in a different time, and certainly for Ireland it was a very different world when the technical file was written. So hopefully we'll see some changes. I'm curious. Before I want to get you to play a tune because I want to get you played a little bit before we went on. I was blown away. And as you're getting ready with a tune there, I want to ask anyone in the audience, especially Chris Hennessy and those who are familiar with older whiskies from Ireland, with rum casks that were used in Ireland. Were rum casks used heavily? I know they came into Cork, and the trade of rum from the Caribbean into Ireland was big a long time ago. But when I taste this Grace O'Malley, it instantly transports me to an older Jameson from Bow Street or an old Powers from Bow Street. And I don't know if rum was ever used in maturation for Jameson in Bow Street. Maybe Chris can give us some feedback on that. But I'm curious because it instantly transported me to, I think, a sample, Chris, you might have given me from Jameson back in the day. So I might be way off, but anyway, that's what I'm getting at the moment. Chris, so Chris is there in the chat. Phil, what are you going to play for us?
Right, so I thought I would do a wee song by the Waterboys first of all, just to get us warmed up. Obviously, a bit of the Waterboys were an interesting band, and they were like an amalgamation of people from Scotland, England, Ireland, and Northern Ireland. So I thought that was kind of probably not a bad place to start off,
Very diplomatic. Good man.
So go for it. I wish I was a fisherman, tumbling on the seas, far away from the dry land and its bitter memories, casting out my sweet line with abandonment and love. No ceiling bearing down on me, save the starry sky above the light of my head. You in my arms. Oh, I wish I was the brakeman on a hurtling fever train, crashing headlong into the hot land like a canyon in the rain. Oh, with the beating of the sleepers and the burning of the coal, I count in the towns flashing by in a night that's full of soul. The light of my head, you in my arms. Oh, I know I will be loosened from the bonds that hold me fast, and the chains all hung around me will fall away at last. And on the fine and fateful day, I will take thee in my hands. I will ride on the train, and I will be the fisherman, the light of my head, you in my arms. arms, all out of my head. You, all out of my head. You in my arms, all out of my head. You.
You.
There you go, lad. Number one.
I love it.
Thank you very much.
The Water Boys. Would they have been a favorite of yours when you were younger?
Yeah, I mean, like that particular album was a bit of a sea change for them, because they kind of went from being quite rocky and nearly new wave, because I think they had inspired bands like Simple Minds and things before that.
Yeah.
And then Mike Scott kind of went down this kind of Celtic, more traditional folky route, and that song there, just like some of the songs I picked tonight specifically, Barry, are because you title your show Stories and Sips, and I think there's stories behind these songs. You know.
Yeah.
So,
I love it.
And they invoke images, and that's the whole point of them.
Very good. That was brilliant. Jesus, we'll have a long night ahead of us now if you've got stories behind all these songs. That's brilliant. I hope you brought your sleeping bag with you. There'll be no going home tonight.
Sure.
I think we had some at the first minute or two there. We had some audio choppy issues, and I think we might just have to sit back from the mic with the next song. But it caught up with itself just in case. But yeah, everyone picked up the good tune there, so no hassle. Very good, brilliant stuff. Right, so we've a tune inside our heads. What's the second whiskey we'll move on to? What are you going to drink?
So, well, you know that this week I have been doing an open your bottles week.
Explain that one. It's very self-evident. Open your bottles week.
Yeah, so my editor on Malt, Jason Julier, Whiskey Rover on Instagram and other places, he has he done this last year. He was just sort of perturbed a wee bit about the fact that a lot of people are buying whiskey and putting them on shelves and looking at them and going, "Oh, look what I have, that's lovely."
Yeah.
And not giving like the distiller the credit of like creating this wonderful amber liquid that we can enjoy. So the whole point of Open Your Bottles Week is pretty self-explanatory. If you have stuff that's not opened, open it. I think like this year has kind of proved that like life is mental, and you know, just sometimes you know, now might be the special occasion to open, you know.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
But I see you're going to go on to West Cork, so I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Actually, I'm going to leave opening the bottle until you're on your green spot.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to give a wee shout out to Dingle, because obviously they had, and this ties in with Open Your Bottles Week, they've just released the Cask strength and the pot still batch 4. So what I decided I would do is I would sit on pot still batch 1.
The first ever pot still.
First ever pot still release. I don't know how many of these are in the wild are actually open, or how much are being traded, but
you have a good dent in that bottle.
Yeah. Do you know,
whiskey's for drinking?
What's that, sorry, Barry?
Whiskey's for drinking.
Whiskey's for drinking, yeah. And you know, I'm definitely not a collector as such. I don't plan ever really to sell anything. If I'm spending money on a bottle of whiskey, I'm doing it because I want to try it, and that's basically it.
That whiskey you have there is a monumental whiskey for more reasons than one. I mean, it changed the course of Irish whiskey history. Let's be honest, didn't it?
Absolutely. You know, the first independently distilled whiskey in Ireland for, you know, how many, like, what, 50 odd years, coming from the West Coast, going for pot still outside of Middleton.
First pot still released outside of Middleton in 60 years.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, over batches 1 and 2, I would still favour this one, or 2 and 3, sorry, I would still favour this one. I think batch 4 is definitely showing a progression now where you're kind of like, oh, there's going to be some really good stuff coming out of Dingle.
I opened the batch 4 2 nights ago, and I have to say it's my favourite of all of the Dingles that have been released. I thought it had a lovely balance of spirit and wood, and there was a lovely floral nose to it, and a lovely fruit component that I feel kind of sat behind a lot of the spirit in the past, and the spirit kind of came to the front now. So this is probably 7 or 8 years old, and you're starting to kind of see a Dingle DNA. And if this is what Dingle is going to be going forward, I'm in, because this to me now is the best whiskey they've ever released. This 4th pot still.
Yeah, and we were lucky enough to try it in Belfast Whiskey Week with the components as well, with the bourbon and the sherry component, and oh goodness, they're just sell those components as well, they're just unbelievable.
100%. And I know there was a lot of events around this release over the past few days in Ireland online, which was great to see, and a lot of great reception to Dingle. Look, Dingle we're great pals and supporters of Dingle here, because they were doing, forget about the whiskey. Dingle is just paradise. Let's be honest. It's on a summer's day. There's nowhere but I'd rather be on earth than Dingle. First of all,
yeah, it's such a beautiful place, and it has Dick Max.
It has Dick Max, so you never have to leave the town. Now they're making the whiskey as well, so they can keep Dick Max filled. But wonderful story and distillery there. So I'm delighted to see the evolution of the brand, which is great to see. This whiskey I'm drinking, I want to hear more about your tasting notes on that batch 1, but this West Cork IPA is the most unusual whiskey I've tasted, I think, in all of the years that in the 4 years that I've been kind of throwing my nose into whiskey bottles. It's called West Cork Blended Irish Whiskey, Irish IPA Cask Matured. And this is a collaboration between Black's Brewery in Kinsale, which is also a distillery now. So unusually it's got a label that has both West Cork Distillery and Black's logo on it. So it's one of the rare labels with 2 distilleries on the front. And so it's a blended whiskey that has been finished in a cask, a beer cask that previously contained IPA. Indian Pale Ale or Irish Pale Ale, depending on the storyteller that you're hearing it from. But this is the most unusual nose. So I'm not a beer drinker. I think it's an awful waste of barley, personally. But when you put your nose into this, it's unmistakably IPA. So for those of you who love an IPA beer, that hoppy grapefruit nose, this is like, I'm not putting my nose into whiskey. I'm putting my nose into an IPA, a glass of IPA that has sat there for 2 hours after somebody went home. I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean there's this kind of flat IPA nose to it, which is very, very unusual, completely masks the whiskey. So I've never, of all the beer cask finishes I've tried over the past few years, none of them have exhibited this beer forward nature. All of them have been kind of whiskey forward to me. This is so beer forward on the nose. It's incredible.
You see, it's strange because of the beer finishes I have tried, the IPA finishes are my least favorite. And I think whenever you put them with a blend, that because IPAs are so hoppy and so citrusy and so floral, that what they do is they elevate the floral nature of a blend. So I totally get where you're coming from, but you're just smelling kind of like stale beer, or the hops and the citrus and things take over. So for me, I'm not a huge fan of IPA cask finishes as of yet. I haven't had one that has made me go, oh, I'll definitely go and buy that again.
I have to get you a sample of this just to try it, because it's so unusual. Like I always say, I have a very amateur palate, and every guest I have on here knows more about whiskey than I do. But I'm starting to pick up on notes here and there and educate my palate and learning from people like yourself and other guests. But when I taste this now, it's like I'm chewing on a bowl of bar nuts, like nuts in a bar. I've never, honestly, it's the most unusual whiskey I've ever had. It's as if you took, those bar nuts, awful things that people stick their fingers into. Now, I'm not saying that's finger sticking bowl of nuts is not the note I'm getting, but rather if you had a pile of nuts and you soaked them in beer and you left them, that's what you taste. It's like you're chewing on a bowl of nuts. Very, very unusual whiskey. Yeah. So if you're a beer and nut drinker, you're in heaven. If you're a whiskey drinker, maybe not.
No. I mean, I don't mind IPA. I mean, IPA wouldn't be my even favorite beer, to be quite honest. I'm definitely much more of a stout or a porter man. But again, like what you're saying there, Bar, about like even just exploration, I think we all like that's even Mark. I mean, Dave. I think maybe even sort of maybe pointed this out in the night he was on. Is like, I mean, I personally just try anything I can, whether it's food, whether it's alcohol. Like Dave's doing an amazing thing at the minute with like a sherry bottle share that we're doing.
I saw that, yeah.
And like I am like just I can't wait to try some of this stuff.
Nerd out in it.
So I think like all personally for me, I think if you're closed-minded as regards food and drink and experiences that way, it's going to have a negative impact on how you appreciate whiskey. Yep. But if you try, even if you don't like it, just try it. Yeah. You know, because it definitely informs your palate. And it's amazing some of the things that come back to you whenever like you're trying whiskeys. You know,
it is, and I'm always trying to avoid tasting notes before I try something. So what do I get first? And then I look at a tasting note later. I look at 4 or 5 different tasting notes and see, was I close or what is somebody else getting? And then I look for that note. And then once I click with that note that somebody got, I'll never forget it. Your mind remembers it.
Well, I think the thing is, Barry, as well, though, like what we have to remember is all these things are totally subjective. You know, like my palate's informed by my life, my journey through food and alcohol and travel and things like that, as is yours. So there's never really any rights or wrongs. Like, and I think like this is one of the things even about like doing reviews. I mean, I'll never say that I'm right about anything. It's just my opinion. So like one of the whiskey that you are going to be coming on to later, like myself and Dave Mara disagree entirely on this. And that's perfectly fine, you know. So
that's the wonderful thing about it, though, isn't it? Is that you can disagree, and I'd like to see more disagreement, quite honestly, because now that I'm starting to taste and identify and differentiate more and more, I think I'm going to be able to say, actually, I don't like this, and be quite honest, and here's why I don't like it. And I'd like to hear more of I don't like this rather than everything being great, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And like, you know, that's one of the things actually why I think sort of Malt stands apart from a lot of other things is because we have quite a body of writers. And what that enables you to do is you can kind of align yourself with someone's palate. So, you know, like I would agree, even with like Jason, I would agree with him maybe 80% of the time, and then the other 20, there are times I'm just like, no, I would completely disagree with you here. And it's actually quite funny seeing like the Malt backroom chat at times, because you know it's just like, where are you coming from here, mate? Oh, this is, you know.
So tell our audience who don't know both of the websites that you're working on, you work for or kind of work on in your spare time. So Causeway Coast Whiskey Reviews and Malt Review. Help us understand what these two whiskey sites are about and how they came about.
Well, Causeway came about mainly because I probably had the biggest whiskey collection of my mates, and I had an interest in not only like Irish but bourbon and Scotch and so on. And I would do tastings with my friends, and then basically what happened was I was reading other people's reviews, and there was one whiskey. It was a Bowmore. It was a Bowmore Black Rock, and it is probably one of the most disgusting whiskies I've ever had in my life. But yeah, what I noticed was that there was a huge amount of people who were like totally bigging it up, and the only other people who had that I could see that had really like cut it down were Jason and Mark, who are now the co-editors of Malt. So at that time, Jason was doing Whiskey Rover and Mark had Malt. So also at that time, then Jason used to do quite a lot of like live feeds on Instagram, and I would have always joined in, and especially from the Scotch point of view, like he was able to answer a lot of the questions I had about Scotch. So one of my friends, Paddy, up in Buncrana, he was like, look, why don't you think about doing your own reviews? If these reviews annoy you so much, why don't you do your own reviews? And I kind of thought, well, okay, well, we'll see where it goes. I remember asking Jason, I was like, look, I'm pretty new to this. I don't really what advice would you give me for doing this reviews? And he was just like, look, just be honest. Just say what you get and whether you like it or whether you don't. That's it. Just be honest. And people will get into that. So I started at Causeway in 2016, got a few reviews going, and then Jason actually messaged me then in 2017 because Mark and Jason decided to amalgamate their websites in the Malt Review as we have now. And Jason had sort of said, look, we've taken notice of your reviews because you're kind of just shooting from the hip, and not many other people are doing that. Would you like to be part of something bigger? And then they talked me through what was going to happen with Malt. And the rest is history. And I've thankfully been part of the original team since 2017. Interestingly, now it would seem that Malt is actually the biggest whiskey resource in the world.
I saw the tweet during the week. Yeah, the Alexa rankings for the site. Yeah,
so that's kind of quite
How
impressive.
often do you write for it? What's your frequency and your cadence with reviews on Malt?
At the minute, this year, just because of other circumstances, I've probably only really been doing one a month. But I've been trying. I want to try and get back to doing 2 or 3 a month, the way I was at the start. But I think the thing about Malt now is you see the quality of writers. Adam Wells and Taylor Cope are unbelievable writers, right? Mm-hmm. And so before I press the send button to my editors, and I love you too, Michael, even though you have the worst wardrobe of anyone I know, but still, you're a lovely person.
Apparently he's nice underneath the clothes.
Yeah, apparently so. So I think even from that point of view, they've just totally upped the game as regards writing and how you get across your message. And so even that's I'm not going to say it's a burden that you're trying to follow in the footsteps of these two guys, but it definitely improves how you're thinking about things and whatever. So
you have to be a good reviewer, has to be a good writer, a good communicator, a good palate, a good nose, and those are things I suppose that develop over time, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would like to think my writing has got better the longer that I've been involved with Malt. So kind of the way that I'm doing things now is that with Malt, I'm always looking for an angle to get a story across. You're talking about stories, so I want to put a story across, whether it's something that's annoyed me or, whether it's just something that's going on in the industry or whatever it is. Causeway now, and basically Causeway is going to be the stuff that doesn't make the grade for Malt. So if I don't view that it's good enough to go to Malt, it will go on Causeway. So I'm probably not selling my own site very well, but that's just the way it's going to be.
Brendan Carty, owner and distiller at Killowen, says it's a great site, Malt Review, but it gives distillers brown pants.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it'll not be hopefully on Wednesday he'll be happy and I'll not be getting dogs abuse online. So,
well, we had mentioned before we went on air that the Irish whiskey industry is still so new for reviews. There's more and more now people who are coming online with YouTube channels and podcasts and sites, which is amazing to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it'll be great to see more coming along and saying, yeah, I like this, I don't like that, because we can't like everything. And I'd like to know why somebody doesn't like something, so that might help me understand why I don't like something. And it's a good thing.
Absolutely. And I was chatting, as we were saying earlier on, I had a chat with Ivor there a couple of weekends ago at Whiskey Talk to You on Twitter, part of Talk Dram, and he just wanted to have a chat with me about how we scored things and how I formulated reviews and things, because he had put up a post about having a Bushmills 16, and I was like, nah, it's bland. I just find it bland.
Yeah.
So he was like, right, I'm ringing you at the weekend to find out why.
Interesting.
But you know what? It was a brilliant chat, and that's the whole thing, is that people perceive things different ways, and that's absolutely fine. And as you say, you see the amount of people now that are coming. We have Kevin Murphy's doing like the Still Triple Distill blog. We have Brian Hennessy starting to do a bit of like YouTube stuff. Like Ross doing like the Scran Merchant. He's starting to do a few things on top of people like Omar and Dave and Ivor and myself, and obviously Mark as well now with Cast Strength Communications. And to be honest, actually in Ireland, like I would put Mark's palate and nose way above mine. To be quite honest, I think like some of the tastings we've done through Twitter, like some of the stuff that Mark pulls out is unbelievable. So the more the merrier.
I agree, and there's a great concentration of Irish people in the chat tonight, asking great questions. And Dave Mara asks me if I can name 3 unpeated Irish whiskies that I didn't like. I'd be happy to. I've struggled with the first couple of releases from Dingle. I didn't like the first releases from Dingle. I cannot, for some reason, get to like Writer's Tears, Copper Pot. Can't warm to it. I don't know why. Don't like it for some reason. And a third one, and back to the Writer's Tears, for some reason it's always come across as very harsh to me, and I don't know why. It strikes me as something that my palate just doesn't take to. There's an abrasiveness to my palate with Writer's Tears. Now others I know will crawl over hot coals to get to Writer's Tears, but I can't take to it, and I don't know why yet. What else have I not liked? Trying to think what has sat on my shelf for a long period of time. You know, I'd have to think. I'll think about that. I'll find the third one. I'm on the spot right now. I'm looking at the whiskies that I've accumulated in the 2 weeks that I've been in Ireland, and they're very different from the whiskies I've accumulated.
Anything by the Quiet Man, Barry?
The Quiet Man, yeah. That wasn't terrible. I don't know. I'll think about that. I'll come back, David. I won't let you down. But there you have early Dingle, most Writer's Tears, and I'll find the third one that I haven't liked.
Yeah.
All right. Why don't we try another tune, seeing as you're doing all the work and I'm not?
Grand job. Well, so this is probably my favourite Irish band. So I kind of hope I do them justice here. And again, a bit of a transatlantic theme to this, like Irish American. So the guitarist in this song was Scott Gorham, and you probably know where we're going to after that. So Phil Lynott was the bassist. So this is Dancing in the Light by Tin Lizzy. So we'll see how this goes.
Take it away.
When you passed me in the doorway, oh well, you took me with a glance. I should have taken the last bus home, but I asked her for a dance. I was steady to the pictures, I always get chocolate stains in my pants. Father says he's going crazy, says I'm living in a trance, dancing in the moonlight. It's got me in the spotlight. It's alright, moonlight, on this long, hot summer night. Well, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm on the streets again. I disobeyed another warning, oh, I should have been home by 10. Now I stay out till Sunday, I have to say I stayed with friends. Oh, but it's habit worth forming, it's a means to justify the ends. Dancing in the moonlight, it's got me in the spotlight. It's alright, moonlight, in this long, hot summer night. Dancing in the moonlight, it's got me in the spotlight. It's alright, moonlight, in this long, hot summer night.
Nailed it.
Thank you very much.
That was killer. The sound was crystal clear too.
Excellent.
That was perfect.
Happy days. Happy days.
The crowd loving it. Give Phil a round of applause there in the comments, folks. If you enjoy the bit of music there, unreal. People asking, John Keane wants to know if you're taking requests. If so, Mayo Moon. If you know that one.
I'm done. Sorry, John.
There you go now, John. You have to sing it yourself, John. Mark Ashley, loads of claps. Eamon Hegarty, Laura Barry. How are you, Laura? Laura, I think I got a package from you in the post. I'll be opening it today, this evening or tomorrow morning. Thanks for sending that, Laura. Who else have we got? Johnny McNally, Connor Ryan, Richard Howe. Great stuff. James J. Lynch. People loving the tunes. Jeez, you'll have to stop your whiskey reviews and just start playing music.
Don't know about that now.
David Mara says, man, Phil. That's all he needs to say. Man, Phil.
Man, Phil, yeah.
Good man, Phil. Lovely, lovely stuff. As I was sitting back, sipping on my whiskey, beaming from ear to ear as I do whenever musicians come on and just play, I was trying to think of a third whiskey that I haven't liked for David Mara, who put me on the spot. And I remembered it was Teeling small batch. And it was the first ever Teeling I'd ever tried. And I couldn't connect with it and I didn't like it. And it put me off trying other Teeling expressions for the longest time. And even to this day, I still struggle to connect with the Teeling brand. And I'm just reminded of the Abraham Lincoln quote of, I don't like that man, I should get to know him more. And I think that's what I need to do is, and Teeling were very kind to send me a package of samples to work my way through. And I know they have some incredible releases, but Teeling has for some reason just kind of evaded my gaze. And maybe that small batch threw me off. I don't know.
Yeah, it's the small batch. I kind of get where you're coming from, to be honest, Barry. I mean, it's not my favorite blend either. And I've kind of had a mixed bag with some of them, like Teeling stuff. Even some of the revivals I haven't been terribly keen on. I quite like the first Renaissance 18-year-old that came out. And I think the pot still is definitely going in the right direction now. Definitely the first release I really wasn't a great fan of, but you can see the progression. I think the first pot still was very confused because they used like 6 or 7 different casks, whereas now they're like down to 2 different casks, and you can just works better.
I love that first pot still from a historical standpoint. Look, I'm not a whiskey academic, as many people will realize very quickly, but I love stories, I love history, and to sit in Teeling in the distillery the week after they released their single pot still, the first pot still in Dublin in 45 years or so, I think was a special moment, and you got to hand it to them for doing that. So there's a wonderful opportunity, I think, for Teeling, and I think that, look, they're in safe hands. They've qualified a very experienced distiller and a good business family as well behind them.
Absolutely, and I think we're going to see really great things coming from Teeling. And actually, like someone had mentioned there about Michael had said about the black pits being good, and I would agree with him. I think like they've done a great job with the black pits.
I have a sample of black pits now that I have to try, and now that despite your ongoing feud with Sleeve League put me over the edge towards peated whiskies with the dark silky, and I had to say I love that blend of like kind of sweetness and peat. It for me. Yeah.
Well, I'll just point out that Dave did back me up there earlier on, because he did say, well, actually, Phil does like the new silky releases. So the new silkies, especially the dark silky, I think actually is kind of up there with Jameson Black Barrel.
I read your second review and it was a lot more glowing, and I like the objectivity of it, of saying when I first reviewed it, here's what I thought was wrong. I think they've made some changes, and here's what I think now. And I thought that was fair. I thought that was fair. Very fair.
So
why don't we sip on, I think the one whiskey that we're both going to drink at the same time, which was a late arrival to this lineup tonight, is, that's the wrong one. This one, Bushmills 2008. Oh,
yes. Right. So in true open your bottle style, I'll just have to crack mine now.
I opened this last night on a Zoom tasting with Kieran Quinn, who's on the line here as well. Kieran, we had a good old sip on the whiskies last night. He was sipping on Redbreast 30-year-old, and I was sipping on the Bushmills 2008.
Nice.
Maybe these might be my 2 favorite releases this year. 1995 Bushmills, 2008. I think they've knocked it out of the park with these 2 releases.
Well, I think, this is something, I mean, Mark touched on this last week. Like we have been, and I mean we as in like everyone in Ireland has been asking for Bushmills to put out something at cask strength because we know that they're capable of something really good. I mean, just the color of that straight away. Like, I mean, and these are natural color.
Yeah. And bottled it straight out of the cask strength. No color.
Yeah.
No dilution.
Michael says that he couldn't get a bottle. Michael, did you get? Have you got a sample? Because I'll gladly send you a sample. No problem.
And thanks to Daniel Pennington for putting me in, connecting me with a secret stash in a place that he knew about in Cork that I went and got. Not just one, Daniel, but I have to tell you, I got two there because it was such a good deal. So
I have to say, the nose on that is absolutely beautiful.
Oh, it really is.
I mean, there's just this lovely amalgamation of spirit, wood, and fruit.
Oh, it's a joy. It's you know, you come across these whiskies where you just smile because you know there's something there. You just smile. You don't have to say a word, you know.
Yeah, and the legs in the glass are like fantastic.
So this is what 56.4%.
Yeah,
almost hand sanitizer.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, I have the 1995 as well, Barry, and I'll probably open it this week as well. Because I'm just, like, I've seen how much of a dent you had made in your bottle last week, and I was just like, well, that tells you something. Yeah.
There's the 95.
Yeah.
Honestly, I love this journey of whiskey. I think I'm curious to get your thoughts, but you know, you start off liking a certain style. Like for me, single pots like Redbreast, such a fan of Redbreast, and then you stick with this one style for so long, and you might ignore single malts or good blends, and then suddenly you taste an incredible single malt. Like for me, Bushmills 21 was kind of the moment of, oh wow, Irish single malt can be amazing. And then these two, it just blows my mind that I'm 3-4 years into tasting whiskey, and we have the joy of still coming across amazing finds, you know.
And I think, to be honest, Barry, though, with the way the Irish market is now, that's only going to continue going on. I mean, pretty exciting that we're going to have Blue Spot coming out again.
How do you know about Blue Spot? There's no official word. How dare you try and blow embargoes?
Well, I know that you've lost your bottle right enough.
I got a box that was missing a bottle. You're right. I don't know what was going on there. Yeah.
So, there's just so much stuff in Ireland. I think that we're going to be excited about going on in the future-wise. The thing that's got me about this Bushmills straight away is how soft it is. I mean, it's velvety. This thing, like, there's no this is not aggressive. This is
there's a wonderful black pepper meeting habanero spice that it's not harsh, it's not heat, it's a spice.
It's spice, and that's the thing is, you know, it's and the nose is matching the palate, and you know, there's no aggressive alcohol on the palate.
And they were keeping all this from us. They were hiding it in the warehouses in Bushmills, hiding this whiskey for the last 20 odd years.
Well, this is the thing, and the funny thing is, Barry, that speaking to people who, I mean, I remember whenever Jose Cuervo took over, and there was kind of like this renewed invigoration of like the staff in Bushmills, because, oh man, I'm getting like this real lovely like cacao nib, you know, the
cacao nib, yeah.
Like
that's
really, yeah. But they were just like invigorated. They were like, "Oh, this is going to be so good," because like Jose Cuervo coming in, they were going to do like bottle your own exclusives. There was going to be cask drinks coming out. Like, you know, when I knew about the 28-year-old cognac cask for so long before it actually came out, just from like people saying like we've been in the storerooms and these are the type of things we have. Why are they not going out? And so, bar the fact that I might have to sue them for using like the Causeway collection, like, and they're kind of using my name.
Yeah. There was no Causeway before you, of course.
Yeah. bar that, I think like I'm pretty happy with what we've just done. You know.
These are remarkable. You wouldn't know they're at cask strength. And when I first opened in 1995, I think I was three measures in, and I was about walking at a 45-degree angle to the floor, and I suddenly realized I should probably check that ABV, and then I realized how high it was, 53.5. It's these bottles won't last long. I'm curious though. So I tend to find myself really falling in love with older whiskies, and often it'll mean very soon that I won't have a roof over my head and I won't be able to sleep indoors because I'll be spending my money on these older whiskies. But is it just? I mean, there are younger whiskies that can surprise us just as much as these older whiskies, aren't there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in fact, I suppose for me personally, Barry, I seem to see that this Moscatel Bushmills kind of fits into my taste bracket really well. I tend to find I seem to nearly go for whiskies that are maybe between 10 to the 18, in between that.
Right.
And just because it's old, I mean, I've had a few old, and we'll come into this with your next whiskey, that I've had a few old whiskies that are sort of like, oh. Probably the one that has surprised me the most, actually, Barry, though, and you're talking about age, was at the charity tasting that yourself and Omar and Dave organised, and the Method of Madness 28-year-old.
People speak of this as if it's the second coming of the Messiah.
Well, I would probably go that far. I mean, it was honestly the one whiskey where I thought, see, if I had a spare 1,500 quid that I could have bought that at retail, I would do it because it was so good.
Is the Redbreast 30-year-old just the same thing but 2 years older and for half the price?
Well, because I don't get invited to things, I haven't got a sample of that yet. So
I don't get invited to things either. I buy my whiskey.
And to be fair, I did buy a bottle, but I bought it for Val down in Waterford Whisky Society because he wants to have it for a tasting. So I used up my one whiskey exchange token to help Val out. So, but if somebody is selling samples, I will definitely buy one of them.
We'll be turning my locket into a buy and sell exchange site for giving Phil samples of whiskey. Somebody feed Phil
why not?
Okay, well, if anyone is throwing around samples of 30-year-old all port Redbreast, Phil will put his address up there now shortly for us, so feel free to send them whatever you want.
But actually, last night for open my bottles week, I opened a Dublin Liberties Distillery exclusive, which is a 6.5-year-old single malt, cask strength, bourbon matured, and you know what? Superb, really good.
6.5 years old.
Yeah, really good. Not slightly spirit driven, but you know they were using obviously really active first fill casks, and there was a good integration.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. Just because, and actually, I tell you, the one now you probably won't like this so much because it's peated, but a really young whiskey is the W.D. O'Connell Bill Fill.
Yep.
And for a young whiskey, like I had one of the malt contributors there, Rose, who lives in California, and she bought the Bill Fill cask strength, basically off the fact that myself and Mark both like Bill Fill. And she was telling me tonight she thinks it's absolutely brilliant, and she actually said it had a kind of Campbelltown kind of tinge, which is pretty high praise considering, you know, the sort of reverence that people have for Campbelltown whiskies. Except for me, of course.
Of course, yeah. You're always the exception to the rule, which is why it's surprising that you even like the Method of Madness 28-year-old, and you don't have some philosophical opposition to it.
I think Barry, that is it's just one of those whiskies though that it just blew my mind. Honestly, it was just like, how can whiskey be this good? Do you know?
That was the night. For those who hear this mentioned, we talk about it in hushed tones. This incredible tasting that we were lucky enough to be part of last year in the Middleton Distillery. I think the first time they'd ever hosted allowed a tasting experience after the gates were closed, after the distillery was closed. We had a wonderful experience, a fundraiser with Omar Fitzel from That Strand Good and Dave O'Connell and myself in a very small way. But there was a whole bunch of us there. I was looking through the photographs from Bill and Anne this week.
Yeah, so did I.
Yeah, amazing. He took photographs of the night that we were there, and it was to raise money. It was a fundraiser for a couple of different charities, and we had a fantastic night. But I was still relatively new to the world of Irish whiskey, and I was looking back at the photographs this week, and I realized that now I know everyone that are in the photographs. But back then, I was standing beside people that I didn't know at the time, but now I'm good buddies with them. Yeah. And it's amazing how quickly that community grows. But when I tasted that Method of Madness 28-year-old, I was still, and this is just last year, 18 months ago, I didn't know what Method of Madness 28 was. And so I remember tasting it, and I didn't know what I was tasting. And I think I was in the middle of a conversation with somebody, and I stopped.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, what was that? Because I think it might have been one of the first ones we tasted. It was early on. And I thought, that's unreal. And it was savagely good. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, I mean, same for me. I mean, I was just like, this is just how this is even 1,500 quid. And I'm not into like whiskey being expensive, but that should have been the most expensive Irish whiskey ever, as far as I'm concerned, because it was so good. I'm just looking at the comments here, and Rose from Where I Dram is saying that the Bill Fill was a game changer for her, that she thought it was such a great recommendation. So glad that we can encourage people to drink more Irish.
Yeah. I'd be curious to hear if you do get to try the Redbreast 30-year-old, because people have told me, well, look, you're really getting a deal here. It's the Method of Madness 28-year-old plus 2 years, let's be honest, because it was recast after 6 years into port. And I think that was the same with Method of Madness. I think that was exactly the same. So, or maybe I might be off by a year or two.
Well, I think the Method of Madness, though, somebody in the comments will probably correct me here, but I think the Method of Madness was 6 years bourbon and 22 years port.
And the Redbreast 30-year-old was 6 years bourbon, 24 years port.
Oh, right, okay.
So this is where it gets interesting to me now, is where you have two profiles that had maybe a very similar journey. Now, I don't know if they have their same style of pot still is in both. Whether one is a medium pot, trad pot, what is it? I don't know, but I know the barrel maturation follows the same journey.
Yeah. Oh, well, okay then. Well, do you know what? You've definitely piqued my interest now. So,
how are you finding now this 2008 as it kind of opens up?
Honestly, as you have just already said, I don't think this is going to last very long. It's one of the most approachable cask strength whiskies I think I've tried in a long time. Like, it doesn't drink like cask strength, and yet the depth of flavors that are there, there's a lovely woody spice to it that's not overpowering. You still kind of get the underlying Bushmills like tropical fruit notes.
Yep.
And there's like, you definitely get like kind of like the foam banana and mango and papaya kind of going on. But
I'm getting just chocolate that you mentioned.
Definitely. There's like this whole chocolatey note thing that is just like, it's chewy. Yeah. It's chewy. Like, you just want to swirl it around your mouth and like.
I know. I have to brush my teeth after it. Like. We were mentioning on Twitter earlier. So for those in our American audience, you need to be aware of 3 events that happen every week on Twitter. If you're not on Twitter, and they're related to hashtags. Yeah, you should be part of it. Any self-respecting Irish whiskey fan will join in. Friday Night Dram, hashtag Friday Night Dram, starts at, I think, around 8 o'clock Irish time.
Yeah. And
then on Saturday, you've got Saturday Night Sip, hashtag Saturday Night Sip. And then on Sunday, you've got hashtag Sunday Night Sup, SUP. Yes. And it's a great place where you wouldn't want to have a thin skin now if you were involved in putting those hashtags in there, because there's all kinds of Irish banter flying around and great kind of degrading comments that could only be found in Ireland as you cut. The greatest compliment you can give somebody in Ireland is to insult them to the nth degree. And you'll find that in these on these 3 events. But we were chatting in there earlier tonight, and I jump in and out. I haven't got the constitution to be keeping up with how some of you are in there 3 nights a week or for the whole of Friday Night Dram and then straight into Stories and Sips lock-in. Like, I don't know how you do it. But I mentioned how there's we need a tune tonight that acknowledges an election week, religion, and whiskey. 3 things that should never be mixed together.
Yeah.
I challenged you. You said you have one.
I'll tell you what. I was going to do because we had Casey on last week, right? So the next song I'll do for him because it's an Irish punk song. So I think I'll do this song. This is a band called the Felice Brothers.
Called who?
The Felice Brothers.
Yeah.
They're an American group from kind of like the Appalachians. But their musical kind of voyage is pretty. It's all over the place. Like they're a bit of country, they're a bit folk, they're a bit Americana. Anyway, this is a song. This is called "Whiskey and My Whiskey," and I think it kind of touches on everything. So we'll give it a go here, right?
Good man, Phil.
I put some whiskey into my whiskey. I put some heartbreak into my heart. I put my boots on that old dance floor. I put 3 rounds, Lord, my 44. I loved a girl, she was my sunshine. Her name was Eleanor from Caroline. Well, she got fast with a friend of mine down at the dance hall on the county line. So I put some whiskey into my whiskey. I put some heartbreak into my heart. I made my way across the old dance floor. I put 3 rounds, Lord, my Eleanor. Put some whiskey, I filled my glass. I filled my glass with Uncle Jack. I'll lay my skin, my Sunday black, and I'll make my way on that railroad track. I'll leave my world, Lord, and I won't look back. And I put some whiskey into my whiskey. I put some heartbreak into my heart. And I made my way across an old dance floor. I put 3 rounds, Lord, my Eleanor.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love it. Is there a greater...
Anyway, there you go. The most simple song I had tonight, and I messed it up.
No, you did great. And look, we're how many whiskeys in? Cask strength whiskeys in are we now? But is there a greater accompaniment to whiskey than whiskey?
Well, this is the thing, you know. I mean, we should put whiskey in our whiskey. That is really the whole moral of that story.
Sure. Look, if people weren't putting whiskey in their whiskey, there'd be no use for blenders.
Well, this is it exactly.
You know. There's a lot of banter going on in the comments there. Dave Mara wants to know if I don't. He says if I don't put something on the screen, and he's demanding a recount. Dave, what do you want me to put on the screen? I trust you enough to put anything you suggest on the screen. We won't be getting into election talk because there's no left or right, blue or red when there's whiskey concerned. There's just, do you like Irish whiskey or do you not? That's all I'm concerned
about. We just don't need that nonsense here.
No, we don't need that nonsense. I support love and care, and that's all I support.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
So, Phil, when I met you in person for the first time, I think was at that Middleton tasting that we did in the summer.
That's correct, yeah, definitely.
I remember we retired to the what's the bar in Middleton beside the distillery? Coppinger's? No, is it Coppinger's?
It was Coppinger's. Yeah.
And we things devolved into drinking and owl triangles and all kinds of things there late into the night, as most things do. And I have to say that there's a particular joy for me on these lock-ins is connecting with people that maybe I've met in person, maybe I've not, but are just have a passion, have an interest, and the kindest people I've ever met. And the biggest connection I've ever felt since leaving Ireland, the biggest connection I've ever felt back with Ireland has been the Irish whiskey community. Isn't it an incredible community of people, to be fair?
To be honest, absolutely. Like, I mean, you were talking about the Twitter thing there, and like it is brutal at times, and it is the best crack. And you know, like I think the great thing, it's actually something that I've talked to other people about, is that in Ireland we will never be able to get too big for our boots.
No.
Right. Like you'll get cut to shreds, and rightly so. Like, we all deserve it. You know, we're all Muppets, we're all Egypts, but the thing is, we all get on really well. And like sometimes I've seen certain things on Twitter from, I don't mean to sound racist here, but like from some of the guys in Scotland and England and all the rest of it, and they're just so like up themselves.
Yeah.
And you know, that's the great thing about Ireland, is that we can disagree about things, but it's done in the best possible taste. You know what I mean? It's like, and no one gets annoyed at each other. Like, you know, you just have the best of crack, it's the best of times, and we're all here for each other. And I think that's the best thing about it.
Ireland is a unique country, and you hit the nail on the head. Like, you wouldn't be allowed in Ireland to get too big for your boots. And it's like, I've been in America now for going on 15 years, and it's a thing you'd miss, you know. And what I've loved to watch over the past few years is, as my wife has started to embrace in a huge way Irish culture and absolutely loves the banter and loves the crack. Now her favorite phrase is "catch yourself on," and that's a Derry kind of Northern Ireland thing too, you know, like
totally.
Or in a pure kind of Derry girl's accent, "catch yourself on," you know.
Yeah.
And she loves it. And now I have an American saying to the Irishman, "Would you catch yourself on?" Like, and I love that. Is there anything that personifies Ireland better than "catch yourself on"?
That, or "wind your neck in."
Wind your neck in.
Wind your neck in, you know. You know, like, and it is, I mean, like, at the end of the day, like, it's one of the funny things. I mean, I remember actually making a comment about Omar.
Who's Omar? We don't know who this guy is.
We don't really, well, he doesn't really exist. You know, he's a figment of our imagination. He's sort of like Nightmare on Elm Street. He's a figment of imagination that doesn't really warrant considering. But no, I remember making a comment about Omar and Thomas Goggle.
Germany,
from Germany. And he actually DM'd me, and he goes like, "Do you and Omar not get on?" And I was like, "No, Thomas. Actually, we get on like a house on fire. But this is how we talk to each other." So people, especially like Canada, probably gets it even worse than America, because like Canadians are so polite that they just would never talk to each other the way that we do in Ireland. And so they just think we have a vitriolic hatred of each other, when actually what we're doing is kind of slapping each other in the back.
So for our American friends and our Canadian friends and anybody who's joining from outside of Ireland, and we have a good audience from outside of Ireland, and Mark has asked, he said, I'm going to need some translation. And look, this is a tough thing to explain, but the Irish, for some reason, are so afraid of appearing above their station or too big for their boots, or that they have any level of success. They'd be afraid of what somebody would say to them. And so the phrases that ensue and that kind of correlate with that are catch yourself on. In other words, don't be getting too big for your boots. And I think Ireland is one of the few countries in the world where a Bono from U2 can sit in the corner of the pub and have a pint and nobody will bother him. And it's funny. One story I'll share that explained this to me, that I think explains it to a lot of people, that I heard when I first moved to America, was Larry King was interviewing Bono. And it was around the time of the Celtic Tiger. Okay. And he was saying to Bono, isn't this amazing what's happening in Ireland? You know, you've got this Celtic Tiger, the economy is growing, people are getting houses that people could never afford homes before, now we're getting on the property ladder. And he said, isn't it amazing the success in Ireland? And Bono, kind of cool as a breeze, just replied to Larry, and he said, no, Larry, I don't think you understand what it's like in Ireland. He said, it's very different to America. We don't value success the way you value success. And Larry King was curious. He said, what do you mean by that? And Bono said, listen, he said, in America, he says, two young boys will be walking down the street and they'll come upon this massive gate that leads up to this wonderful, beautiful, imposing house on a hill that's looking down upon them. And these two boys, these American boys, will look at each other and they'll say, you know what? Someday I'm going to get that house. And that's the American way, is this kind of drive for success and accumulation, perhaps. And there's maybe more of a capitalist approach. And he said, it's very different in Ireland, Larry, he said. Those two boys walking down the street in Ireland will come upon this gate, this massive gate in Ireland, and they'll see it winding up to a hill up the top of the house, big imposing house looking down upon these two boys. And they'll look up at that house and then they'll look at each other and they'll say, you know what? Someday I'm going to get that bastard. And that's Ireland.
Yes, absolutely.
That's the Irish way, is you can't let somebody be successful.
Totally, absolutely. And I think that's the thing about like where the banter comes. I mean, honestly, if anybody joins in any of those evenings, like, I mean, you're having like people like Graham Cool, who's the head distiller now down in Dingle, and he's like so involved in that sort of stuff, and like the banter is just like unreal. It's the best crack. Like,
it is.
And I think like what you're saying there about people doing Friday night dram and then coming on to this, but you know, that's Ireland. That's the crack. You know, like if once we get turfed out of a bar, you're going to somebody's shebeen.
That's right.
Do you know what I mean? So,
but wouldn't it be awful to lose this informal, self-deprecating approach to life? And I'll be the first to say the last 2.5 weeks back in Ireland have been this wonderful reminder of the lightness that life can be. And look, I think our American friends will all join in and agree, I hope, that things can get a bit tense and things can get a bit one way or the other. You're left, you're right, you're up, you're down. I don't know, you're in, you're out. It's hard to keep up sometimes. But in Ireland, we're kind of like, yeah, but, you know, like, we just want to know, but is there any crack? Like, you know,
totally.
That's all.
Absolutely.
Is there any crack?
Absolutely. Totally agree.
I just poured another drop of whiskey in here. I moved on to Green Spot 26-year-old.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what I'll do then is I shall now, even though it'll cost me a lot of money, I'm gonna do this anyway. So I was looking this up tonight actually on the Whiskey Exchange. So this is the Jameson 18-year-old, the old one.
Oh.
So this is on Whiskey Exchange for 250 quid a bottle. My friend picked this up in Portugal for me about 3 years ago for £62.
For nothing.
For nothing.
Gave it away.
And you know, tonight you seem to progress open it. So
you're a good man, and I appreciate a good, as does Chris Hennessy, our buddy in the chat. He coined the hashtag seal breakers, and I'm a big fan of seal breakers.
Absolutely.
David Morrow says that Green Spot 26 is Phil's kryptonite. So you'll be on your knees now in a minute, holding your head. Your headache will be killing you when I open this Green Spot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at least I'm not drinking it. I suppose that's a good thing.
So while you're, for some reason, struggling to open a bottle of whiskey there.
Oh no, it's corked.
It is not. He broke the cork.
So give me a second.
Go on. Listen. This shows that there's no rehearsal here, and this is not recorded. It's all live. Man, Phil, 300-pound bottle of whiskey there now. He's after breaking the cork. Right, so I'll talk about Green Spot, 26-year-old, while we wait for Phil to come back with his corkscrew. So what we have here is a whiskey that was released 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, bottled in 2017, laid down in 1991 in Middleton. And it is a single pot still whiskey that was released by the Whisky Exchange, the famous retailer, has a couple of stores in London and also has their very strong online presence. And they do amazing bottlings. Like they just released the 30-year-old Redbreast. Nobody else has access to it. The Whisky Exchange has access to it. So they released 2 Green Spots the same day early last year. Green Spot 12-year-old, which sold out in 10 minutes. And then Green Spot 26-year-old, 500 odd bottles, I think 560 bottles. A 26-year-old Green Spot. There'd never been a Green Spot older than, I don't think, 12 years of age. And anybody in the comments who knows better than me can correct me if I'm wrong. But for the first time ever, you had this 26-year-old pot still whiskey with the brand Green Spot on it. And we had this at our tasting in Middleton. I bought a bottle of it when it was released, and I donated it to our tasting to raise money for charity. And I had never tried it before, and it was an instant hit at the tasting. Dave Mara, I know, ranks it as one of his top 3, and I would be top 3 or 4 or 5 myself at the same time. What you have here is a whiskey that has spent time in ex-bourbon, ex-oloroso casks, and then spends the last year or more. I don't know exactly. Chris Hennessy will correct me. The last year or 2 or more of its maturation in a single Marsala cask. And Marsala is a fortified wine, a Sicilian fortified wine, Italy, kind of the northwest coast of Sicily. Marsala, the town of Marsala, they make this very famous fortified wine. It's very sweet wine. It's often used for cooking. Chicken Marsala, you might be familiar with. It's an incredible whiskey. It blew my mind when I first tasted it, and this is the remainder of that bottle from the tasting. We have 150 milliliters left of it. Some of this is making its way back to America to give away to some friends who would appreciate such a thing. But it's a kind of a divisive whiskey, and as Phil has stated, he has disputed the claims of how good this Green Spot 26-year-old is. So we'll talk about this now in a second.
Yeah. So I managed to get the cork out without it spilling into the whiskey. So slaunch it.
Good man, slaunch it. Jeez, that's a good pour.
Well, do you know, that's...
Jesus. Do you want a bucket? We'll get you a bucket for the next one.
I thought whenever I get invited on the Barry show, I may as well make a show. So,
jeez, we'll have you back at those kind of quantities.
Like. Oh, do you know what? Such a great nose off that.
Now, this is a different 18-year-old to the current 18-year-old, because doesn't that 18-year-old have a port component to it?
Actually, I contacted a few people in Jameson about that tonight. So I think there's more sherry component in this.
Okay.
The new one, and so it is a vatting of bourbon and sherry casks that have more sherry than the recent one, and then it's put into first fill bourbon for 6 months at the end of it.
The new one or the old one?
Even the old one was done in a 6 months in first fill bourbon.
Was there any port contribution in that one at all, that 18-year-old, or was it a different one?
It wasn't mentioned to me anyway, Barry.
Okay. I might be thinking of another one. There is a Middleton, there is a Jameson that had a port contribution. I thought it might have been the 18-year-old, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
So I'm 5 whiskies in now at this stage.
Well, I have to say that the nose here it's just gorgeous. There's that lovely woody spice, but it's not like dominant. It's just, they're giving you that warmth, where you're getting like clove and nutmeg. You're getting that kind of oloroso sherry burnt sugar thing going on.
Is that a cask strength one, or is that's 40% or?
It's actually 40%, and yet, do you know the thing about it is, even 18 years old, it's so vibrant. It is really vibrant.
Michael and Daniel and Jeff mentioned that And now I'm called Baza. So this brings me back to school. I was Baza in school, and now I'm Baza again.
Yeah.
Who told people? The rarest vintage had port.
Right.
Daniel Pennington says the 18-year-old master selection had a port component.
Oh, okay. Well, this is just the limited reserve. It's not the master selection.
Okay, rarest vintage reserve had a port contribution. See, look at this. Educated people in the comments that can correct me. I love it.
Exactly. Well, every day's a learning day, Barry. That's why we're here.
Oh, it just is.
Absolutely.
How do you like it?
Yeah, it's a fine whiskey, I have to say. Like, honestly, the nose is just something that you could sit there all night. It is just so good. But it's the woody spice thing that keeps on coming back. It's that clove, it's the nutmeg, the vanilla, and you get that lovely pot still spice that comes through. I mean, it's not pepper or anything. It's just you get that, you know.
God, Jameson can do great blends when they want to.
Like for me, Barry, the one that I am so disappointed has been discontinued is the gold label.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the gold label was a blend apart.
People love that. People absolutely love the gold.
It was so good. In fact, well, see, Richard Kelly said he's still waiting on Black Velvet Band. Sadly,
so we're here for the next 7 hours, Richard. Don't worry, we'll get it out of him.
I don't know that song, Richard. Sorry. So unfortunately for you guys, I'm not massive into trad stuff. Like, I love Irish bands and all, but I'm not massive into trad. So sorry about that.
I want you to go the other direction now. I want Mark Knopfler. I want you to go more contemporary too. I want to know what you'd love to play. Like, how, if you were to open up the guitar, like, what would you play? You know.
Well, I'll tell you what I'll do 2 songs in a row here, right? So what I'll do first of all is, because you had Casey on last week, and he said that he loved a bit of punk. He did. So I kind of thought, well, there was a pretty renowned punk band that was only 28 miles up the road from me. They had a wee lead singer called Fergal Sharkey.
Okay, here we go.
And I thought, you know, why not do this, right? So we'll do that, and then I'll do a Rolling Stones number after that, and that's kind of the type of stuff that I like playing as well.
I'll talk about the Green Spot 26-year-old when we come back, but I'll sit back and almost empty this glass while Phil gives us a couple of good tunes there. Fair play to you.
No bother. Here we go. So hard to beat. Every time she walks down the street, another girl in the neighborhood. I wish she's mine, she looks so good. I wanna hold her tight and get teenage kicks right through the night. I'm gonna call her on the telephone. I have her over cause I'm all alone. I need excitement, oh I need it bad. And it's the best I've ever had. I wanna hold her tight and get teenage kicks right through the night. A teenage dream's so hard to beat. Every time she walks down the street, another girl in the neighborhood. Oh man, she looks so good. Wanna hold her tight and get teenage kicks right through the night. I'm gonna call her on the telephone. Have her over cause I'm all alone. I need excitement, oh, I need it bad. It's the best I've ever had. Wanna hold her tight and get teenage kicks right through the night. Wanna hold her tight and get teenage kicks right through the night. Come on.
Boom. Yes.
So,
Soundtrack to my childhood.
well, do you know what a band, like, between that and My Cousin Kevin, you know.
Unreal.
Oh yeah,
Brilliant.
Fergal, A Good Heart is hard to find. I see. Whenever I was growing up, I absolutely loved that song.
I did too. I did too.
Just a
That's a very different tune. Like those are two very different tunes, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I mean, like totally where I went from. Absolutely. So,
do you remember the you know, the Now This Is What I Call Music, and there was the
yeah,
like the double cassette of the 80s, or maybe it was 4 cassettes of the 80s, and I remember Fergal Sharkey, Good Heart Is Hard to Find, was on that.
mm-hmm.
And I remember listening to it over and over again, and it just, I don't know why, it was one of those songs where you'll find it and you just, that's your song for some reason. It connects, and you keep pressing play, rewind, play.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally get you. It's just, it's one of those songs. It's a bit of an earworm. It gets into your ear. You can't forget it, you know. And Fergal's such a great singer as well, you know.
True Love, The Lasting Kind.
Totally. So I'm going to do a Rolling Stones song here. This is off their eponymous Exile on Main Street album, which is just absolutely a superb musical album. Rolling Stones at the top of their game. So this is the acoustic number off it. I've just always loved this song from the start. So I'll give it a go.
Give us one favor, Phil. Push yourself back a foot from the microphone there, just so we get the right audio, and then we should be good. Lovely. That's it.
Is that okay, right?
That's it. Go for it.
Okay, right. There's not a friend to help you through. Trying to stop the waves behind your eyeballs. Drop your reds, drop your greens and blues. Thank you for your wine, California. Thank you for your sweet and bitter fruit. And I've got the desert in my toenail, and I hit your speed inside my boot. Oh, come on down, sweet Virginia. Oh, come on now, I beg of you. Oh, I want you to come on down, you got it in you. Oh, you gotta scrape the dirt right off your shoes. come on down, I beg of you. Come on down, you got it in you. Oh, you gotta scrape the dirt right off your shoes. One more time. Oh, come on down, a sweet Virginia. Come on, honey child, I beg of you. Come on down, you got it in you. Oh, you gotta scrape dirt right off your shoes.
Boom. Yes. That was excellent. I love it. What a great tune.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Don't the Rolling Stones give us hope in the sense of just when we think we might be pushing ourselves over the edge, we can look to them and realize that, you know what, there is no edge. You can just keep pushing the boundaries.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, for people like, for those guys and the lives they've led to still be here, so it's totally unbelievable. And, you know, to see, like, just like, see, Keith Richards is a genius. Like, he is just an absolute genius. Mick Jagger is like one of the best vocalists ever. Like, they're just such a great band. Absolutely great.
Unreal. Brilliant performance there. Loved that acoustic version. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, that suits you so well. Like that's a lovely tune for you.
Cheers. Thank you, man. Appreciate that.
Great response from the crowd. They're loving it. Lots of applause is coming in there from all over the world.
Happy days.
I'm curious to get your thoughts on this Green Spot 26-year-old. So I read your review. You were part of a tasting in Waterford. You went down southeast of Ireland, the sunny southeast, and you were part of a tasting that involved a number of different green spots. And part of one of the tasting, one of the whiskeys you tasted in the middle of all that was the Green Spot 26-year-old. And you didn't rate it very highly at the time. And you're the only person I've ever heard that has not rated it highly. I think you gave it 4 out of 10. Yeah. And I don't know of a single soul that has had anything but reverence for this whiskey. And I'm curious, are you sick?
No. Honestly, if I spent 500 quid in that bottle, I would be so disappointed.
Go on.
And Dave is probably like just going off his station here right now. He's probably like throwing bottles of Waterford against the wall because it's annoying him so much. Which, to be fair, like, is no loss. Like, the Waterford stuff's not that great either, Dave. I don't know where you're coming from.
Keep the point here now. We'll come back to Waterford later.
Yeah. So I just thought it was so cask dominated and so like just not alive. It was like, yes, it's old, but there's no vibrancy. There was like, it's all wood, and it's not even Marsala. It's all wood. That's what I got from me. So comparing it to the whiskies as well, and we were talking about this off air. Good, Dave. I'm glad you are. So I think, like, we were talking about this off air, and so I've tried it twice, and both times it has been in particular tastings. The first time was with the Green Spot tasting that Waterford Whisky Society done, and we had the 12-year-old bourbon cask. There was the 13-year-old Bordeaux cask, which was like, I can understand why that sold out super quick. I mean, that was unbelievably good.
Was that the Palace Bar one or no?
No, that was just the Mitchell and Sons themselves.
Mitchell and Sons, yeah.
And then we had the 26-year-old, but also what was interesting then was that Jer Garland came down with a number of bottles actually. And what he done was he brought sister casks. So he brought a sister cask for the 12-year-old, and he brought a 13-year-old cask strength sherry green spot component that goes into yellow spot.
Yeah.
And one other that I can't remember now, because we got the taste 5. There were 6 bottles, but we got the taste 5. Do you see the 13-year-old sherry cask? It was the most, like, honestly, I would have paid €200 there and then for that bottle, easily. It was just so alive. It was so vibrant. There was like so much stuff going on. There was like balsamic notes going on. There was traditional sherry notes. There was nuttiness. There was raisins. There was the pot spice was so predominant. It was just something it was an absolute work of beauty. Like, I mean, I was just like, I was in love with this stuff. And then I tried the 26 after it, and I was kind of like, oh God, what the hell happened here?
Do you want a 26-year-old to be alive, though? Because if we were to think of whiskey years, a bit like dog years, they're different to human years. 26 years in the whiskey world is ancient. It's elderly. It's old age pensioner status. And there's not a whole lot of old age pensioners now jumping around all sprightly and full of life. Maybe there's more, but is that what we want for a 26-year-old?
That is a great point, but I think the thing was then that we'd done the Middleton tasting, and I'm struggling to remember what all was there. I know the 28-year-old Method of Madness was there. There was, I know we done Black Barrel cask strength. There was a Marsala cask there as well. At the down in Middleton. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think I know where you're coming from. But I do expect a bit of vibrancy. Like, I mean, you look at Redbreast 32, right? And people like question me because I only gave it an 8 out of 10. Which, to be fair,
never happy. There's no pleasing you, like.
No, there's no pleasing, and like the nose alone on the 32-year-old was
savage.
The nose transitioned to the palate, but the palate was slightly less than the nose, which is why I got an 8 out of 10. The thing about the 26-year-old was, for me, the nose was fantastic, and then I tried the palate, and I just thought, I'm not going to spend £500 to stick on, like, to suck on wood sticks. That's it.
I mean, poor Billy Lighton. Billy Lighton was here earlier. I hope he's left the chat before he's insulted at this. But Maureen's curious. Do you ever do blind tastings?
Mm-hmm. Well, that gets me on to another good story, Maureen. So on Malt, we done. Jason decided that he would do a couple of blind tastings. One of which was the Glenfiddich Firing Cane, which I gave a 2 out of 10, and Justine gave a 4 out of 10. And then the second one was a Springbank 15, which I gave a 3 out of 10, and Justine gave a 7 out of 10. And I universally got absolutely torn to shreds over that review, mainly because I said that I felt as though it tasted like a cheap supermarket blend. But the thing is, I stand by it. Like, I didn't like it. That is how I felt. I think the thing that annoyed me more was no one actually paid attention to what Justine said. And so Justine was, I'm just reading Laurie here.
Don't worry about him now. You give us your story.
Yeah, so I think that sort of annoyed me. I mean, to me, that review actually showed that blind tastings work, because I think there's something wrong if everyone agrees all the time.
Well, that's true. But so there's the subjectivity and objectivity in whiskey.
Yeah. Every
single person approaches whiskey from their own subjective bias. And now, especially with blind tastings, where it's tough to well, look, I'm curious about whether you share your criteria then for tastings, because you giving it a 2 out of 10 might have different metrics and different evaluation criteria than somebody else who gives something 7 out of 10. And the subjectivity is the challenge to me in whiskey ratings numbers. I don't pay any attention to whiskey ratings because, to your earlier point, everyone tastes whiskey differently.
Yeah.
So how do we decipher or determine between your 2 out of 10 versus somebody else's 7 out of 10 for the same whiskey? Are we looking at the same criteria or are we not?
So I was asked this question before about like what are we looking at, and I suppose for me, there's 3 things involved in how I taste whiskies. There's balance between nose and palate. There's complexity and value. And some people don't apply the value metric. I know Dave's not keen on applying the value metric, but I do because, like we were talking off air about, whenever we started into our whiskey journey, how would we have thought like 4 years down the line we were regularly spending over £100 a bottle on a bottle of whiskey, right?
Madness, yeah.
And for most people, that is crazy. So from my point of view, I suppose the way with value especially, I think a lot of people have spoke to me and they sort of said that like 50 quid is kind of like a price point where they think, if I'm spending £50, that's a present to somebody.
Yeah.
Right. And then once you get to £100, then it's kind of like, well, you're expecting much more.
But that's subjective too, you see, because when you and I entered into this whiskey world, and I'll tell you, like, when I first entered into the Irish whiskey world, I was sipping on Jameson Black Barrel for the first 18 months of it and wondering, how could I afford the next Jameson Black Barrel? Because it was $35 spending on a bottle or something.
Yeah.
But at the same time I was doing that, there was lads 2 years ahead of me, 20 years ahead of me spending $1,000 in a bottle. So I'm struggling with the subjectivity versus the objectivity. So it would almost seem like there needs to be a key for me to understand your review, so that I know that you've determined these are your 4 criteria and somebody else's are different.
Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll read you the malt scores, right? Just so that we can have a wee bit of objectivity about how.
So this is Malt's grading system.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to find this here now.
I'll put it up on the screen too here.
Why am I not seeing this? It's not showing me this now.
I have it here. The scoring bands.
Yeah. So anyway, if you look at the scoring bands, so you have like 5 out of 10's average, 6 out of 10 solid. Maybe not for a special occasion, but pretty decent. A 7 out of 10, and there is a price point in the 7 out of 10, which is £50, as far as I remember. So if it's under 50 quid, it's worth a pump. 8 out of 10 is excellent. If it's over 50 quid, you shouldn't think twice. And then 9s and 10s are exceptional and unbelievably mind-blowing. So what people kind of get carried away with our scores sometimes, because I think a lot of people, especially like Dave and all, who relate to this, he's used to the wine thing, which I don't get in any way. But if we give something a 5, that doesn't mean it's a crap whiskey. It actually means it's solid. Like, you're going to get an experience out of it, right? It just may be that whiskey's 100 quid, but for that 100 quid, it's solid enough. But actually, you might get a better whiskey for 70 quid.
But you see, that description now is at odds with how you describe that. I would say is at odds with how it's listed here. So you were saying it's not a bad whiskey, whereas 5 out of 10 here says it's bang average. Now you can just and it also says don't expect your pulse to raise. So
no.
I don't want to remove the subjectivity from whiskey reviews, but I'm curious, how does everybody use this grading score then, do you think, at Malt Review to evaluate, or is there more subjectivity coming in than this?
I think this is the human element, isn't it, Barry? Subjectivity is what it is. I mean, sometimes, and this is yourself, you can have a whiskey with friends and it'll blow your mind. And then the circumstances are perfect. It's a lovely summer evening, you're having a barbecue, the crack's mighty. Someone who's playing Black Velvet Band, even though I'm not, and all that sort of stuff, and it's brilliant. And you make a connection with that whiskey at the time, and then you might try that whiskey a week later and go, I'm not getting the same things that I did on that night, And that is the difficulty with this. That's why there's no hard and fast rules to this.
So that's where I want some descriptions then. I want, like you said to me earlier, you have never tried the Green Spot 26-year-old solitary tasting on its own. And that had it as a lineup.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing where I have to hold my hands up in that regard, is that I haven't. So possibly I might approach that whiskey in a different way.
Yeah.
By having it by itself. And me and Dave have actually had this conversation where, and I had it with Ivor as well, is although I apply this metric of balance and complexity and value, sometimes though you just get whiskies that are so they're so skewed one way. They might be a total sherry bomb, right?
Yeah.
But it's kind of they're so wrong they're right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? But that's just my interpretation at the time. And
which is fair, yeah.
Yeah, which is fair. And so other people may not get that. And for example, Dave just thinks that the Green Spot 26-year-old is a total dessert dram, and that's what he wants. He wants that sticky toffee pudding and all the rest of it. Whereas actually, whenever I tried it, all I got was wood.
So let's come back to that. So the 26-year-old, Green Spot 26-year-old is what I'm tasting right now. And I am in the camp of saying it's one of the juiciest, most flavorful, delicious whiskeys I've had the pleasure of tasting.
Yeah.
But I have a couple of questions for you on it.
Yeah.
When you're tasting a Green Spot 26-year-old, is a part of your mind wondering or establishing, first of all, what a Green Spot is? Because I've asked Billy Lighton this, and I've asked Dave McCabe and the blenders in Middleton about the profiles of whiskies that bear a name. Totally. We know that a Redbreast is the backbone of the Redbreast brand is a fortified wine contribution, predominantly sherry.
Yeah.
We know that Powers is going to be spirit driven. It's going to be bourbon predominantly.
Yeah.
Green Spot now has a profile. Let's just take Green Spot, the standard Green Spot. It's a light, summery, crisp, green apple, fruity whiskey.
Yes.
And that's when I think of Green Spot, that's what I'm thinking about.
Absolutely.
So my question to you is, when you get your Green Spot 26-year-old put in front of you and you're asked to evaluate, or you're evaluating it in your head, are you evaluating it against that profile, or are you saying, well, forget about all that, let's just drink it?
Yeah, because I think that's the thing, Dave, or Barry, sorry, is I have done that even with the Bordeaux and even with the Zinfandel. I'm sort of going well, this is what Green Spot is.
Yeah.
As you rightly said, it's a crisp, it's a fruit driven kind of pot still whiskey. It's not heavy. It's not a trad pot. It's fairly light, but it's just such an eminently drinkable whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have something like the 26-year-old, which is so dominated by the Marsala.
Yeah.
That you're is this a Green Spot anymore?
So that is the kind of the follow-up question is, what about this 26-year-old whiskey is a Green Spot?
Well, that's the thing. I for me, and I think that's where I kind of went with my review, is that it's more Cask than it is Green Spot. And it's one of those things. This is the beauty about whiskey. Dave's not wrong. I'm not wrong. You're not wrong.
You're always wrong.
Well, I'm always wrong, to be fair. I mean, I am grumpy. But it's what people get from it. If you enjoy it, who am I to? I'm not here to poo-poo that. I'm not here to say you're wrong. I am glad that you and Dave both love that whiskey. I think that's a great thing. It's just not where I came from, I suppose.
So and I respect. I love hearing opposing views, and I want to know why, and that's why I'm diving deep into it. So David Mara, who's still on the line here, who's still tuning in, you posed a question to me earlier about the 3 whiskies I didn't like, and I answered you. So I'm going to pose a question back to you, David Mara, in the comments, which is, what makes this a green spot? And I don't think it's a green spot. Now, that doesn't make it a bad whiskey. It's just the Irish Distillers is this behemoth, this enormous brand that has the enormous company that has to make these decisions on a daily basis and a weekly basis about the profiles that exist within their 1.4 million casks that exist in the distillery at any one time. And they have to, in a ridiculously, in an oversimplistic way, they have to take all those 1.4 million casks and they have to push them into 6 or 7 brands and say, this lives here, this lives here, this lives there. And Dave has posed the question back at us, which is, would Phil like the Green Spot 26 more if it was labeled Redbreast? So now we're getting into understanding, well, is it that we're being informed by what we were told the brand was, or what the whiskey actually is?
I actually don't think I would have gone with Dave thing, with Dave's question there. I caught a lot of heat with the Dreamcast 20 because I gave it a 5 out of 10. And the reason why I gave it a 5 out of 10 was because, to me, it was a whiskey that didn't amalgamate. Like, you tried the 32-year-old and the 28-year-old, and I'm going to do this review. And actually, it's the one time that I've given in to somebody asking for a specific review, because what I was going to do was I was going to review the 20-year-old on its own. And then Dave was like, well, you still have the 32 and you have the 20. Why not do the 3 of them together? And I was like, I've already done the 28 and I've done the 20. But anyway, I'm going to do that review for Dave just because I like him. And honestly, I just don't think I would have, Dave, because like I look at the DC 20 and it's a mess. It's a confused mess of a whiskey for me.
Do you think?
I think there's too many barrels. There's an overlay then of Pedro Jimenez and nothing gels. Whereas you try the 32-year-old and it's a completely different experience. Like the whole thing holds together and it's just like it's a superb whiskey. And I think even the recent port 28-year-old Dream Cask, it has a cohesion that makes it an absolutely fantastic whiskey.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's the Dreamcast 20-year-old was my first deep dive into Pedro Jimenez, and to me it was a treacly syrup of a whiskey, and to me all the right reasons. Like I can totally see the fact that you had 4 casks vatted together, finished in another cask, complex. Maybe it works, maybe it didn't. But for me, it was this beautifully sinful, sweet, syrupy whiskey. Isn't that the interesting thing, is that we both, and all of us, everyone here, we'll all enter into the whiskey, into the whiskey we're drinking with this idea or hope of what it's going to be or what we want it to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it either is or it isn't.
Yes.
And that's the most subjective piece of all, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And that is why I encourage anybody who is watching this tonight. Like I've been on it, Dave, for a long time to start blogging, because although I don't agree with him on a lot of cases, I absolutely value the input that he gives, and I would love to see that in black and white or on a video or whatever. And that's why I like, as we touched on earlier, I think it's absolutely fantastic that we have more and more people who are putting their voices out there, either online or through YouTube, whatever it is. It's what we need. Absolutely what we need. Adrian Campbell's made the point there about Sonny Malloy's being nicer. Sonny Malloy's 16-year-old was like, that's a 9 out of 10 whiskey for me. That was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was a bit like, €350 for a 16-year-old whiskey. What's going on here? But yeah, then Eddie and John, Eddie and John,
Eddie and Ian.
They done the tasting down in the Palace Bar, and it was Dreamcast 20 We had Sonny Malloy 16. We had Palace Bar 17-year-old. Friend at Hand 25. We had a 26-year-old and a 19-year-old. I think it was La Maison, the whiskey 19-year-old. That was that tasting alone. It was unbelievable, Barry. Like, I mean, it was to be able to try those single casks side by side.
We don't deserve it.
No, we didn't deserve it. I mean, it was. I mean, just mind blowing. But it was great to see actually that in some instances that age didn't matter. Like, you would sometimes assume that an older whiskey would like trump things. Pardon that. But to me, the two standouts for the Sonny Malloy 16-year-old and the Friend at Hand 25. The Friend at Hand 25 is interesting, Barry, because it's actually, to me, it's a really good balance between spirit and wood.
Yeah.
It's very fruity. Some people have likened it to actually a Middleton rather than a Redbreast.
Interesting.
So, but it's actually one of my favorite Redbreasts ever released.
The range of Redbreasts that have come out over the past few years have given us all great space for debate and discussion, and everyone's got a favorite. And I to me, like the Palace Bar is just one of those Redbreasts that's hard to beat. But then again, I've never tried Friend at Hand, and so on we go, you know. But look, here's what I want to know from you, Phil. I want to know. It's actually a question has been posed from Richard O'Kelly, and I think it's a question you answer after a tune, perhaps, which is, what are your top 5 whiskies? Now, they don't have to be Irish. I've spent a little bit of time perusing Causeway Coast, and I have to say it's very Scotch leaning. And so I'm going to put it out there that I'm going to reckon some of your top 5 whiskies will be more leaning towards Scotch than Irish. But who knows? Who knows?
Absolutely.
So what do you think? Will you give us another tune?
We'll give you a tune, and then I'll tell you. I'll do this tune because Mark touched on it last week. About mental health, and sometimes us lads are really bad at talking to people whenever we really should. And you know, like, this year has been more stressful for most of us than we've ever had. We're cooped up, we can't see our friends or anything like that. So so this is actually a Beatles song. Ironically, considering that Mark also done a Beatles song last week about this same subject. But this Beatles song, normally when you listen to the recorded version, is actually a very upbeat song. But I heard Noel Gallagher from Oasis doing a version of this, and it's very low tempo, and I think it just suits kind of the whole situation that we're in. So I'll give it a wee go here anyway. Right.
Take it away.
When I was... sorry. Hold on.
Phil, will you go back 1 foot? Would you step back 1 foot there to get away from the mic? Yeah, good man.
Right, so I think I'm going to struggle getting the key in this. Hold on a second here.
That's the Cask drink whiskies.
Yeah. When I was younger, so much younger than today, never needed anybody's help in any way. Oh, sorry, hold on. That's wrong.
It's a different key, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a different key. Hold on. I'll get this. Younger than today.
There you have it.
I never needed anybody's help in any way. But now those days are gone, I'm not so self-assured. Now I finally changed my mind, I'll open up the door. Help me if you can, I'm feeling down. I do appreciate you being around. Help me if you can up the ground. Won't you please, please help me? And now my life has changed in oh so many ways. My independence seemed to vanish in a haze. But every now and then I feel so insecure. I know that I just need you like I never done before. So help me if you can, I'm feeling down. I do appreciate you being around. Help me get my feet back on the ground. Won't you please, please help me? When I was younger, so much younger than today, never needed anybody's help in any way. But now those days are gone, I'm not so self-assured. Now I finally changed my mind and I've opened up the door. Help me if you can, I'm feeling down. I do appreciate you being around. Help me get my feet back on the ground. Won't you please, please help me, help me. I just realized why that wasn't in key at the start is because I should have had a capo on the second fret. So there you go.
That was lovely. That was just lovely. I was singing away in the background there, and this thing kept popping up on my screen saying, "Barry, your mic is muted. Your mic is muted." I'm like, "Yeah, it's supposed to be because I'm not the singer." That was lovely.
It's a great song, though.
It's a beautiful song. Yeah, very unusual arrangement. That.
Yeah, like the first time I heard it was Noel Gallagher doing it, and just the fact that it was so slowed down and like it does resonate with you whenever you start listening to the lyrics about the fact that sometimes you have to ask for help.
100%. And you made a great point. Men, societally and culturally, don't feel comfortable asking for help. We're supposed to be the ones that are. We have all the answers. We're not supposed to feel. We're not supposed to hurt. We're not supposed to cut. We're not supposed to bleed. And Jesus, we bleed and we hurt and we cut. And wouldn't it be lovely if we were more open to being able to ask for help? And you know, Phil, you're breaking down some stigmas and approaching those stigmas in the best way, which is, look, we should ask for help.
Absolutely. Totally.
We should ask for help.
Definitely.
If anybody wants any help, you can message me anytime. Honestly, now, look, I'll talk to people till the cows come home. If somebody wants somebody to talk to, we shouldn't have to hurt alone, and too many of us do, you know. And there's probably isn't it the saddest thing of all when we hear of somebody that passes away that we know there was such support there if we'd only known.
Yeah.
And we don't know. Yeah.
And that's the thing. I mean, like, you know, like Dave O'Connell has been putting that out in his Twitter feed and stuff about like if you need to reach out, like he's there with like a phone number and all the rest of it. And it is hard times for people. Like, I mean, we're being not through anybody's fault. Like, we're being subjected to these sort of times where we maybe can't be close to our family, we can't be close to our friends.
Right.
Some people are struggling with employment. And, you know, that's a very difficult worry that you're sitting there going, like, can I actually, like, provide for my family?
Yeah.
So, like, that is the thing. Don't bottle that up, because if you bottle that type of stuff up, all it does is lead to self-harm. Like, your friends are there for a reason. Like, in some ways, we are more blessed than ever that we have telecommunications the way we do. Like the fact that we can even do this tonight, Barry. You know, you're in Cork, I'm in the far north of Northern Ireland. We're talking to people in America, people from Ireland, all the rest of it. Like, just be there for your mates and, hold your hands out, have a chat, and build each other up.
And I think it can be hard sometimes to see through the darkness, and that saying of it's darkest before it's dawn, that this too shall pass. And while it might feel like it won't pass, there's nothing permanent about what we're going through. Yeah. There's a feeling of permanence, but it's never as permanent as the worst alternative.
Yeah,
and
totally.
I think it's an important conversation. We should probably have more of them. Which is, I think there'd be hundreds of people that would call off work to talk to somebody who needed to be talked to and needed just a friendly ear. And I'll put that out there tonight and say, if anybody wants to message anytime me through any of the social media channels, I'll stop whatever I'm doing to get on the phone and have a chat if somebody's feeling like it would just help to have a chat. And so hopefully people feel like this isn't men shouldn't feel like they can't cry or hurt. And we know society and culture makes that the case. So look, important words.
Absolutely.
And we'll say it again. We'll say it again.
Totally.
We're 4 whiskeys in.
Yep.
Have we a 5th?
Well, I mean, I can run upstairs and get a 5th. It's not a problem.
Did you open this one yet?
I can. I might just, Barry. Like, just give me a second.
Go on, some man. Yeah, look, on that, I don't want to move on and just make light of that conversation we just had and move on to, let's have a whiskey, and isn't it great we have 1995 whiskey? It's a ridiculous privilege that we all have, but not everybody feels that there's that kind of enjoyment in life. And I don't know that all of us are aware of how tough it can be. And if we are feeling that, maybe we can, if anybody needs to talk, then know that there's a community here in the Irish whiskey community that will be open to talking. And I'm the first to raise my hand and say I'm open to talking, but boy, there's some darkness out there. There's some darkness out there and we all feel it. But just know, I've been through darkness, others have been through darkness, and the light after the darkness is brighter than any light you'll ever see. If we can just get through it. So whatever we have to do to get through it and not take more permanent alternatives, let's find other ways if we can. And I think there's a great group of people here on a Friday night that would be more than happy to talk. And so we'll keep sipping. We'll keep playing a few tunes. This Friday night's about coming together. When we started this, I started this in March 16th. I never thought 7-8 months later we'd still be here doing this lock-in, and it's turned out to be the most important thing in my calendar, in my week, and in my life. And I know there's people who change their plans to come here because it means they're amongst friends. Isn't that a great indication of what a community is all about? And look, that we have these opportunities. So let's leverage each other and let's lean on each other when we have to. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. All right. So okay. Phil's gone on to get a 1995 whiskey. God, it's I'm after being moved a little bit now by that. But look, there's lots of messages there in the audience that if anybody wants to talk, they can. I'll ask Phil when he comes back about his top 5 whiskies as well. So Friday night is about coming together. It's about raising a glass, and we know that that's important in times like this. I hear clattering in the background. Phil is continuing his opening your bottles. Look at this.
Absolutely.
1995. There we go.
And why not? Let's see, no better occasion, Barry.
No better occasion indeed. And it's my first opportunity to have both of these Bushmills with another human. So you're my compadre in this Bushmills journey.
Oh, do you know what? Straight away, just the whiff off the nose of that was
We're going to come back to your top 5 whiskies. I'm being reminded in the audience about your top 5. We're going to come back to that.
Okay, right. Well, I'll tell you straight away, Barry. The number one, and it is an Irish whiskey, is Redbreast 10 or 21. Sorry, Redbreast 21. I gave that a 10 out of 10 on malt. To me, Redbreast 21 is the perfect combination of age, vibrancy, value for money. To me, there is just nothing that touches that whiskey. It is just such a superb drop. And Billy Layton and the guys down in Middleton are to be absolutely applauded for putting that whiskey in the market. It is such a good whiskey.
Where would that live in the top five? Is that closer to one or closer to five?
No, that's number one.
That's number one. Redbreast 21, number one.
Yep.
Number one whiskey in the world.
Yep.
Good man.
Absolutely.
You're lucky in Ireland and the UK and Europe to get access to Redbreast 21 far cheaper in the United States. For some reason, the numbers are flipped when it comes to Redbreast 21. We get most of our whiskies in the United States cheaper than you do here in Ireland.
Yeah.
Yet Redbreast 21 is the anomaly. It's $250 to $300 in the US, whereas it's what, $150 to $180.
Yeah, and I actually bought a bottle of it from a friend there off Amazon yesterday for £125 a bottle.
Amazing.
Which is just like, honestly, Barry, even at 180, I would buy that bottle no problem. Like, once my bottle of Redbreast 21 goes, I'm buying another bottle. That's just how much I like it. Like, the guys at Middleton have just got so much right with it.
It's sensational. The upper echelons of the Redbreast range, which are really only in the last decade that the world has been lucky enough to try them. 21, obviously the Dream Cask, 27 now a permanent addition to the range. They're stop you in your tracks whiskies, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, to be honest, I would prefer 21 over the 27.
Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. The 27, like, I was very excited about it, about the fact that we had a cask strength 27-year-old, but I just couldn't warrant the extra money over the 21. I think the 21 is such a perfect balance, and they've done it so well that, like, they've kind of shot themselves in the foot that it's so good.
Yeah.
You're
right. It's the value for money is there at 21. It's I remember when I first tried it and look at that color. Isn't it amazing? Yeah, the peach, the passion fruit of a Redbreast 21 is hard to beat. That incredible tropical fruit.
Unbelievable. It's just such it's honestly one of the most Moorish whiskies you can have. It's hard not to finish it. Like, if you're with friends, it's hard not to finish that bottle.
Yeah, I know. Adrian says the color in the 2008 and the 1995 are amazing on screen. Honestly, look at that natural color. Look at that.
Yeah. Stunning.
Insane. So this is my first time now having 95 and 2008 together on the same night. Well, look, they've only been out a week or two, but what are your thoughts? Honestly, you'd expect the 2008 to have something massively deficient on the 1995, but that's not the case.
No, and I think what I'm finding with the 95 is it's much more leathery. So you're getting like old leather. You're getting more like clove and cinnamon, like assertiveness. But there's kind of like that Christmas cake thing going on.
It's rich. It's so rich.
Yeah, it's really rich. There's really, like, this is dark chocolate now. We're not talking chocolate. This is dark chocolate. This is 70, 80% dark chocolate. So you have that kind of bitterness going on. But there's just layers of complexity. The 12 is slightly more vibrant to me. Like, I mean, it's a bit more like, youthful energy, and it's a bit sweeter. But like, both whiskies are like you can't complain about those.
So two different cask finishes. 1995 is the Malaga cask, Spanish fortified wine cask finish.
Yep. And interestingly there, to me, that's not cask dominant. Like Malaga wine is really sweet, but actually that's not a sweet whiskey. That's kind of veering on a savoury side. And there are sweet notes, but it complements itself very well.
Isn't there a touch, to me anyway, I'm reminded when I sip on the 1995, I'm actually reminded of the Dream Cask 20-year-old. There's the Pedro Jimenez note on the palate. I don't know if you get that.
I actually get it more in the nose than the palate, actually. I think you get in the nose, you do get that really sweet raisin top note. And there's a bit of like, I don't mean this in a bad way, it's kind of like sweet furniture polish. Yes, yeah. I did.
He was complimenting Bushmills.
Yeah.
He's trying to get back in. He's trying to be allowed back in the door past the facial scanner.
But there's also there's lovely citrus notes in here as well. There's like Seville orange peel, and you still get the peach. Like one of the things about like Bushmills is there's loads of peach, like ripe peach and banana, and like I'm getting loads of peach on this as well.
I don't get the riper yellowy red fruits as much as I get the dark brown black fruits.
Yeah.
I'm getting like prunes meets stewed raisins and sultanas on the nose, and a heavier a fermentation, like a fermented raisin, like a
No, I get that too, but I think there's definitely layers to this. The more that you spend time with this, the more you're going to get. Like I generally definitely get the whole the ripe like peach nectarine that kind of thing going on as well as the dark fruit of maybe like stewed blackberries and prunes and dates.
I'm curious, how do you call upon these flavors in your mind? Like, there's such a repertoire of flavors and notes and noses and profiles that come through. And what do you think is triggering a certain recollection or a memory of a flavor?
I think it's just experience, to be honest, Barry. I think like the more you try things like peach cobbler, say, or I mean, one of the things that I actively do is, do you see whenever fruits are in season? So if I go to my local supermarket and they have papaya and they have dragon fruit and they have nectarines, peaches, all that sort of, I buy them and sniff them, eat them, and constantly just try to renew my palate, both like nasally and like mouthwise. And that's it. And we're coming into the season of dates, of dark fruit, of sherry. Like I try to drink as much sherry as I can.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah. Well, yeah, kind of. So it's just that whole thing of just trying to keep your palate kind of constantly active, I think, is the most important thing.
Yeah, that's good advice. And Dave Mara shared when I first joined Twitter as Irish Whiskey BC back in the day, and I remember Dave Mara sharing that a video that would help me expand and maybe adapt my palate, or just help me on my education, my palate. He shared a video of Gary Vaynerchuk, the wine guy in New York, and it was a video of just Gary Vaynerchuk eating all kinds of foods. He's just had a table full of crisps and fruits and spicy things, and just working his way through them. He's like, if my palate doesn't know what these taste like, my nose never will.
No,
I thought that was great advice.
Absolutely, and like, I mean, I was interested to try these because Mark gave them an 8 and a 9 on Malt. And not that I'm trying to judge someone that's writing for Malt or like whatever, but it is interesting to see how people's palates correlate.
Yeah.
Like I'm sorry, but the 95 is a 9 all day.
9.
Yeah.
So this beats out Dream Cask 32.
For me, yeah.
I think you're on crack. I think you're insane. but I respect your right to be on crack.
Well, why not? Why not?
Well, look, if we can get a 1995 whiskey for a third of the price of let's be honest, or a quarter of the price now, or more, a fifth of the price of a Dream Cask 32-year-old, that would seem like a deal if that was our metric.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's number 2 of your top 5 whiskies?
Again, it's Irish.
Oh.
And again, it's Redbreast, and it's the 12-year-old cask strength.
Interesting.
I just think, now this is specific to the batch 1 of 16. I gave a 9 out of 10, but I know there's batch variants with Redbreast, but it's never massive. Like for me, like I've never tried a Redbreast cask strength that I've been disgusted in. They've all been really high quality, like really high quality. And some people were saying that the 19 is as good as the 16. I don't agree with that. I think the 19 is not quite on the mark with the 16, but it's still, again, such an amazing value for money proposition that I would probably hit a 9 out of 10 again.
How noticeable are the differences to you between each annual batch of Redbreast cask strength?
To me, they're not massive. I think they're more kind of micro. Other people might disagree with me here. I think they're more micro. I would say the 19 comes a very, very close second to the 16.
Okay.
I just think the 16 has something special going on, that it was just like one of those batches where you go, oh, like, wow. But to be fair, like any of the batches I've tried of the cask strength, I just don't think, I don't see how anybody could argue with that quality of liquid.
It's insane. And I get the sneaking suspicion, you didn't hear it here first, those of you who are here still online, there will be some new Redbreast cask strengths coming down the line.
Yeah.
Don't quote me. I'll be cut off. I'll never be allowed into the Middleton distillery again. I'll climb the gates though. I'll get in.
You'll definitely get in some way, Barry. Don't worry.
It's a big estate. I'll find a way in. There's a hole in the fence somewhere.
Yeah.
But there'll be more cask strengths from Redbreast in the near future. I'm almost certain of that, which is good news.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this 1995 is the most. It's the release of the year. It's the whiskey of the year for me. I know there's many more releases in the 7 short weeks that are left in this year. There are many distilleries about to release incredible whiskies, but 1995 Causeway collection, Malaga casks, amazing.
It's superb. Like it really is. It's so balanced. Between nose and palate, it just delivers flavor. It's not aggressive at cask strength. I think I'm actually scared to add water to that, to be honest, Barry, because I kind of don't want to detract from what I'm getting already.
I'm with you.
You know,
I just noticed on the label, it actually gives on the labels the number of bottles that are released. I didn't realize that. So 1995, there's only 2,491 bottles. That's it.
Yep. And ironically, the thing about the 2008 is there's less.
Half. Well,
there's
1,400 bottles.
Yeah, 1,454 for the 2008.
This is as rare as hen's teeth, especially if we're talking about a hen that has 1,400 teeth. But it's, I mean, what a short run. Do you think that there'll be additional releases that will match this now that they've tested the market with the I think what's proven to be a very successful release.
I've been told there's much more to come.
Much more to come. We'll save our pennies. So
yeah.
Sell your children, sell your clothes, sell your houses.
Yeah, basically. Richard Kelly's asking third on my list. So third on my list is a 1988 Highland Park that was sold by Cadenheads, and it was done on a Pedro Jimenez cask. So it's only 10 years old. It was a 88 to 1998 maturation, but it is just genuinely. I gave it a 9 out of 10 at Malt. It's just one of the most divine spirits I've ever tasted. Again, there's a whole cohesion between palate and nose, spirit, PX cask. It's just a thing of beauty. Like, it's just like, well, like you just can't help but not get excited by trying it, you know.
Is that still available, or is that a one-off release? Or
no, there was only 600 bottles. I've managed to have 3 of them.
Cornering the market.
Yeah. So it's just one of those. And again, I mean, that's just my personal view. You know, Jason and Malt may completely disagree with. You know, he may have other Cadenhead ones, and I'm sure he probably does, of much older whiskies. But this one particularly, again, goes to the whole like vibrancy thing. Like, it wasn't overpowered by the PX cask, but it still had that spirit vibrancy of Highland Park. It was just so well constructed. It was just so good. Like, and like I'm my last bottle now. I'm kind of crying a wee bit on my last bottle.
Yeah.
But that is also the beauty, is that these things weren't meant to last. There was only 600 bottles, and it's a bit like, you know, these Bushmills. It's a bit like the Redbreast 27.
Yeah.
Whatever. Like, these are moments in time. They're snapshots, and we should appreciate them for what they are. Like, I may only score a 6 or whatever. That doesn't matter. Like, even at that, it's still a snapshot in time. It's something that we will never repeat. And that's why I always encourage people, open your bottles, have a drink, just go for it. Like, do you know what I mean?
I think that's great advice. And I love the idea of it being a snapshot and a thing never to be repeated, and a thing that you'll always romanticize. And as the years go by, you'll probably, the romantic nature of that tasting will go up in your mind, and you'll romanticize it even further. But that's okay. We need that.
Absolutely.
We need the memory of something, whether it's bigger in our mind or not. So that was your number 3 in your top 5. So that was the first Scotch to make it into the top 5. Where would you go then with number 4?
Number 4 is the Glendalough Mizunara 13-year-old.
Is that right?
Yep.
That surprises me.
I absolutely loved that barry.
Yeah, no, I like it myself. Yeah, it grew on me. I hated it when I first tried it.
And again, value for money. I defy anyone to replace that. I just think it's just such a good whiskey. Like, it takes all the beautiful parts of the Cooley distillate, and then it just amplifies them through the Mizunara cask, and you get coconut. It's just,
it might have the best nose in Irish whiskey. Like,
I totally agree with you. I just think it's just something else.
Coconut, chocolate, vanilla. Yeah, it's an incredible demonstration of the flexibility and malleability of a Mizunara cask and what you can do with it. It's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So that's number. Okay, that's amazing. I didn't expect that.
Number 5, I think I will go for. It's a Scotch, and it's a blend, and it's the Tweedy Ale 28-year-old, which is from the company. It's from Rassi Distillery. But they've been doing blends and stuff before that. Oh, like it was like 130 quid for a 28-year-old blend and at cask strength, and honestly, it was just a beautiful whiskey. It was something to behold. It was really nice. I kind of regret not buying the bottle at the time, because I don't think you can get it anymore. I feel quite fortunate that I was able to have a sample sent through Malt, and I was lucky to be given the chance to review it. But it was beautiful. It was just, again, just so well. It was an 8 out of 10. I give it an 8 out of 10. Very well balanced. Just one of those whiskies you just kind of wanted to open with your mates and go, try this.
Yeah.
You know?
I know what you mean. Yeah, those are great moments, aren't they? We had a few friends came out to San Diego there just before we came to Ireland, and we didn't realize they were coming. It was pure happenstance. We discovered they were landing in San Diego, and an hour later, we're sitting on a deck having in our apartment, just the roof of our apartment, having a whiskey. And this couple had never tried the whiskey I poured for them before, and they didn't know what they were drinking. And I thought, look, we've been 6 months, 7 months in lockdown, and we hadn't had any friends visit. And I thought, if we're getting people to our apartment, let's at least pour them something decent. So I took out bottle of Redbreast 27, poured a decent measure for each of them, and we go up on the roof, and we're sitting on the roof, and we're talking away, and then herself from our friends, she's sipping, she takes one sip, and she's in the middle of a conversation, she stops, and she went, holy shit, what is that? She wasn't a whiskey drinker, and she goes, that's incredible. And I know what you mean about that moment. Like, you want whiskey so good you want to share it with friends. And
totally,
you're so lucky in Ireland that you get to pop something in the post and send it to somebody else in Ireland. In the United States, I know my American friends will agree with me, it's so hard to share whiskey with people because we just can't get it across borders, and we're committing federal felonies by sticking alcohol into envelopes and sending it across the state lines. It's much tougher for us, but I totally see your point.
Yeah, and I've totally heard that. I mean, I've listened to like some of the bourbon podcasts and stuff, and guys are talking about like trying to do interstate exchanges, and it's just mental. And like, I mean, it's slightly difficult here. Like technically, I can't tell the post office that I'm sending alcohol. So like, I have various means of getting around that, but it's still nice to be able to like send stuff to people like Dave or people like Greg, who's bog standard dram and stuff like that, down to Omar, and Ivor. You know, we are very privileged that we can do that relatively easily, as you say.
I'm going to imagine that the federal implications of you sending it are far less than the federal implications of me sending it across America. And my jail term would be longer than your jail term in Ireland, I'd say.
I would say so, but you know what? That Malaga cask was so good, I'm going to pour another one.
Good man yourself. I
was
going to say something there about, so in the next 2 weeks, my whiskey, the story, will be shipping its way around America. And you may have seen it as a collaboration with JJ Corey. Obviously, I'm not.
Yes.
So we've got what we think is an award-winning whiskey. Now, we think that. I'm going to send you a sample, and I wonder, I don't care. I want you to be honest. Would you do me the honor of reviewing it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no problem at all.
Good, bad, or indifferent. I have thick skin, but I
hope Louise does too.
Look, if it's a bad review, I'll take it. I may never talk to you again, but I'll take it, and I'll accept it for what it is. And me and James Doherty will sit in dark corners plotting our revenge for how to get one over on you. But I'd like you to review it because I think we've got a really good whiskey, and it's going to get into people's hands in 2 weeks. And I'll send you a miniature bottle, and just tell me what you think. And
I would absolutely appreciate that, Barry, and no problem at all. And do you know, I think that's the thing is like, you know, genuinely, I'm not here to crush people. That is the whole thing. I'm not here to crush people. Nobody in Malt Review is here to crush people.
Yeah.
Like, we want to try great whiskey as much as anybody does. Do you know what I mean? And like let's be honest. See the first batch of the Gale. The first batch was unbelievable. It was like Justine and Malt gave it a 10 out of 10. Now I might not have been so generous. I think I might have given it an 8 out of 10. But like, it's still a great whiskey. Like that is the long and short of it. So like, Louise knows what she's doing. Like, she knows how to put together a good whiskey. I mean, I've done a review on Causeway about some of the whiskies that Louise has put out there, and one of them was a 1991 Bushmills, and it was honestly, genuinely one of the best whiskies I have ever tried in my life. And you know, if you're getting component parts of that quality, then you know, you can't really go wrong.
So we have some of that. We have some of the 1991 single malt. It's more top dressing, but we have a 50-50 malt and grain, and I think we've got a nice one. Eric from JJ Corrie reckons it's an award winner. But look, it's for the public to decide. I'm not emotionally attached to it. I'm going to be proud when it gets into people's hands, and the fact that more people get to try Irish whiskey of different styles and backgrounds is always a good thing. So good, bad, or indifferent, we're getting something into the market. So have at it.
Well, and to be fair, Barry, like, I think it's like, tip my cap to you. Like, the fact that you've went to this length to bring something different to America, fair play to you. Like, it's something like you're celebrating the Irish whiskey industry by doing that. And I think that is something that, like, we all need to acknowledge as well.
Yeah, no, look, I'm in love with the Irish whiskey industry, and I've said it before, like, with this release, this isn't a money-making release. I don't think anybody's going to make any money on this. But what we're going to do instead is, and that was never the intent. I never called Louise and said, have you any ideas on how to make money? Instead, I called her up and I said, have you any ideas on how we can get a great Irish whiskey in front of people who are used to drinking more standard mainstream Irish whiskies? And this is what we came up with. So I'm just excited to have a conversation about it. And I think we'll have more like that in the future, which is good.
And I think the thing as well, like, I mean, you've hit on a great name there with the story. Like, I mean, we all want a story with your whiskey. We want to know where it comes from. We want to know the history, the provenance. And, you know, like, we're better than going to JJ Corrie, because they're not going to hide behind details. They're going to tell you exactly what you have in a glass.
That's right. I've had many suggestions on what batch 2 could be, because I think we could have sold 10 times as many whiskies, but the turtleneck is one suggestion. Another great one I heard, which is the Irish language, which is Scéal Ella, another story, which I thought was lovely.
That's nice.
Sin Scéal Ella, that's another story, which was lovely. So look, we'll see how we go. If there's a demand for more whiskies, sure, we might release another cask in the future and see how we go from there.
Why not?
Why not, indeed. Listen.
Will we do a tune, Barry, will we?
I think we should. Will you give us a kind of a play us out tune? You've given us 3 hours of your day. What would you sing us out with?
Oh, hold on here. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll do 2 songs to play you out, right?
How many?
2.
Okay, grand. I thought you said 32. I was like, Jesus, we'll be here all night.
I'll do 2, and so the first one here is it's a song by Sting, actually. But the reason why I picked it was because I kind of think it fits in with the whole stories and sips ideology of, like, having a story, right? This song it paints pictures in your head. Now the Sting version of it, personally, I think is crap, right? But Johnny Cash covered it, and Bruce Springsteen covered it, and Bruce Springsteen done it's probably the best version of it. But Johnny Cash is superb as well. So I'll probably do it in a bit of a style of Johnny Cash. So it's called "I Hung My Head." Right.
Love it. Love it.
Early one morning, with time to kill, I borrowed Jeb's rifle, sat on the hill. I saw a lone rider crossing the plain, drew a bead on him, practiced my aim. My brother's rifle went off in my hand, shot rang out across the land. The horse he kept running, the rider was dead. I hung my head, I hung my head. I set off running to wake from the dream. My brother's rifle went into the sheen. I kept on running into the Southlands. That's where they found me, my head in my hands. The sheriff, he asked me why I had run. Then it came to me just what I had done. All for no reason, just one piece of lead. I hung my head, I hung my head. Here in the courthouse, the whole time was here. I see the judge up in his chair, explaining the courtroom what went through your mind. We'll ask the jury what verdict to find. Well, I felt the power of death or life. I orphaned his children, I ordered his wife. Begged their forgiveness, I wish I was dead. I hung my head, I hung my head. Well, early one morning, with time to kill, I see the gallows up on the hill, and out in the distance, a trick of the brain. I see a lone rider crossing the plain, and he's come to fetch me to see what we've done, and we'll ride together to kingdom come. I pray for God's mercy, for soon I'll be dead. I hung my head, 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 I hung my head.
Beautiful. I think we're all hanging our head after this many whiskies.
Probably we are. So
you know, you didn't go for the low hanging fruit of fields of gold. You know, talking about whiskey. You know, I think you went a little bit more diverse there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think it kind of it paints a picture, that song.
It does. It does.
The last song we'll do is an Eric Clapton song, and hopefully I can do it justice, right? So we'll see how we go. Right, here we go.
Great stuff.
Get lonely, no one waiting by your side. You've been running and hiding much too long. You know it's just your foolish pride, Layla. You got me on your knees, Layla. I'm begging, darling, please, Layla. Darling, won't you ease my worried mind? Tried to give you consolation, your old man, he let you down. Like a fool, I fell in love with you. You turned my whole world upside down. Layla, you got me on my knees, Layla. And darling, won't you ease my worried mind? Make the best of situation before you finally go insane. Please don't say you'll never find a way. Tell me all my love's in vain. Layla, you got me on my knees, Layla. I'm begging, darling, please, Layla. Darling, won't you ease my worried mind? Layla, you got me on my knees, Layla. Darling, won't you ease my worried mind? Layla, you got me on my knees, Layla. I'm begging, darling, please, Layla. Darling, won't you ease my worried mind? Layla, you got me on my knees, Layla. I'm begging, darling, please, Layla. Darling, won't you ease my worried mind?
Yes. What an iconic song to play us out.
We kind of messed that up quite a lot there. But
stop. Listen, this isn't Carnegie Hall. This is a bit of crack in the corner of the pub, you know. Nailed it. Honestly, great stuff. Like,
thank you very much.
The audience goes wild virtually. So many claps and cheers. Casey Ball, our guest from last week, says the changes in the verse are a killer, but great job.
Thank you very much, Casey. Thank you.
Listen, you've come in, you've held your ground, you've defended your position, you've hated Green Spot 26, you refuse to take down your review of the Silky.
Yep.
You're a man of backbone and character, and we can't argue against you.
Thank you very much, Barry. Thank you very much.
Phil, you're a legend.
Bill, Barry, thank you very much for having us on here tonight. Really, it's been great crack. Hopefully I haven't annoyed people too much. And here, I look forward actually to the time when we can meet each other in a bar and we can buy each other a pint and have a wee whiskey as well. Do you know what I mean, Barry?
No, I don't want to meet you.
Brilliant.
No, it'd be great to have a pint. I'd love it. It'd be brilliant. And we will, of course, we'll do it. And as soon as the world opens up, I'm going to go on a drinking tour of Ireland. And anyone and everyone who'll come out and meet, I'll have a drink with them.
And you know, the thing is, Barry, then we have to have a discussion about, are we going to have a Beamish, a Murphy's, or a Guinness? Listen,
you'll have a Murphy's if you know what's good for you. It's as simple as that. You'll have a Murphy's. I've often told the story here about how Beamish, Beamish is the poor man's Murphy's, and 2 Cork stouts there. But look, we have to support Murphy's. After all, if it wasn't for Murphy's, would we even have the Middleton Distillery? We wouldn't.
Well, this is it, Barry. Do you know what I mean? This is it, and yeah. I think we should support all three, to be fair. Like, if we go to a bar, we should have a pint of each every time.
Look, I'm happy to partake and participate. So look, we'll do it.
Grand job, thank you.
Phil, you're a legend. Listen, thanks a million for joining us.
Thank you.
Will you come back again to us?
Oh, definitely. Yep.
This is great crack. Thanks so much for so much of your time tonight, your tunes, your whiskey knowledge. We will still forever be questioning your reviews, but that was never going to change. But now we have some insight into why you report the way you do and review the way you do. So listen, be safe. Thanks for the chat tonight, and thanks for the reminder about mental health, an important one, and one that we'll continue to fly the flag for here on the lock-in. So, Phil, Sponcher,
thank you, Barry. Cheers.
We'll chat to you soon again. Good
Thank
man.
you.
Woo! What a night. That was brilliant. Good man, Phil, from Causeway Coast Whiskey Reviews and Malt Review, giving us his insights into Irish whiskey and lots more. So thanks everyone for joining again on a Friday night. What's this now? Our third lock-in in Ireland. We have a few more to go. We'll be here for another 3 or 4 weeks, 3 weeks, and then we'll head back to the United States. A few questions coming in earlier about the story, our Irish whiskey, and yes, many people asking about the Owl Triangle. I'm ready for the Owl Triangle. I'm gonna sing the Owl Triangle, but Dearman saying there must be some heat from that fire. Yeah, is that from the sweat that you're seeing coming down from my face? What you can see in front of the camera is a radiator that stretches up the height of the ceiling. I've never seen the likes of it. That's heating this room like a Turkish sauna. What was I going to say to you? Oh yes, the story, our Irish whiskey. Tomorrow, November the 8th, the train arrives in California with our whiskey on it. So all going to plan. In the next 8 to 10 days, you're going to get an email from me with a link to purchase your whiskey, and then we'll start shipping. The goal would be in the next 2 weeks, we'll be able to start shipping the whiskey. That's your update. I'll post that in the Facebook group tomorrow. And I'm excited. The glassware has arrived. The custom glassware has arrived at our retailer. The whiskey arrives tomorrow. We're almost there, folks. We're almost over the line. I'll be talking to Louise McGuan from JJ Corrie this week, and we'll be talking about kicking off the arrival of the story with a great launch event where Louise will take us through a tasting, and we'll have a good old time. An exclusive event for those of you who've managed to purchase or reserve a bottle of the story. I'm really excited. I didn't think we'd get that this side of Christmas, but the Red Sea parted and allowed us to travel through without too many hurdles and obstacles, which is great. A couple of customs issues on the way in at New Jersey, but easily overcome thanks to our great partnership with Folsom Wine and Spirits in California. So that's the good news. And again, I'll remind you, if you haven't checked out our podcast this week, check out our interview with Dave Mulligan, founder of Bar 1661 in Dublin, and the man who has created these wonderful cocktails, craftcocktails.ie. Strawberry daiquiri and old fashions. This is my third night in a row doing a 3-hour whiskey session. I've had 2 events with companies over the last 2 nights. And I don't know how I'm still vertical 3 nights in. That's 9 hours of whiskey drinking over the past 72 hours. But listen, we do it. We put the time in. It's for all of our benefits. I keep telling myself. Richard asked, did I bring stories and sips glasses with me? No, Richard, I had suitcases so full of things. I have no stories and sips glasses. I had 2 glasses with me. One of them broke. The other one is here with me. And we're almost out of stories and sips glasses. I'm down to my last 10 in San Diego. We'll have another order coming in soon. So sadly, I couldn't bring it over anymore. My luggage was just too full for 6 weeks in Ireland. We'll try and remedy that again in the future. All right, let me have a glass of water here. So part of me wants to show you, I don't know if we can pull this off, but there's a nice backdrop near here. I don't know if we can pull it off tonight, but we'll maybe do it next week. We'll be in the same location next week, and we might do a little bit of an outside broadcast, but there's a nice backdrop to where we are. That might provide a nice little setting for our next lock-in. So weather permitting, we might be outdoors for our next lock-in. All right. So look, 3 hours, 15 minutes later, we're still here. It's time for bed. We all have to go to bed. Have you no homes to go to? Surely you do. We'll close out with a couple of bars of the Owl Triangle. Mark says, thank you for all these Friday nights since March. Mark, they're as much for me as they are for you, but I thank you for your company, and we'll continue them indefinitely. Let me tell you, indefinitely. All right, the Owl Triangle. We've never stopped. We sing this every time. It's like the national anthem at the end of a night. If we don't sing it, nobody goes home. So I have to sing it. So you will go home. You can't go home, but you can stay here, says Casey. That's it. That's it. All right. So a few bars, the out triangle. So I've had a drop of water. Bushmills 1995 being polished off here. The lock-in is coming to an end. We're going to put on the full lights and expose all of our imperfections. All right. Phil did a great job with some great music tonight. I'm not going to equal it. I'm not going to even try. But I'll give an amateur rendition of the Owl Triangle. A hungry feeling came o'er me stealing, and the mice were squealing in my prison cell, and the old triangle went jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal. To begin the morning, the screw was bawling, "Get up, you bowsy, and clean out your cell." And the old triangle went jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal. I wish to Jesus they'd raise my wages from 13 shillings up to £2.10. And the old triangle went jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal. Last verse. Up in the female prison, there are 75 women. 'Tis amongst those women I wish I did dwell. And the old triangle went jingle bloody jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal. And the old triangle went jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal. All along the banks of the Royal Canal. Thank you, everybody, for a great night. Thank you to Phil. Thank you to everybody for joining, for giving us up your time, your interest, your effort, your whiskey. Great old time. Great old night. Thanks so much. We'll do it again next week. We'll do it every week. Check out our new podcast coming out on Wednesday, and you'll hear about the first distillery in Ireland distilling solely with Irish rainwater, Glendree Distillery. So tune in on Wednesday. Thanks, everybody. Kieran Quinn, Andrew Schumann, Casey Ball, John Maritko, Richard O'Kelly. Fair play. Fair play for sticking around for 3 hours and 16 minutes. I'm going to bed. Good luck. Good night. Sláinte.